Love you, Linda. Love you.
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing "Oh Happy Day."
One word prayer. Justice, where are you?
Oh, hey. JSTV TV on the air, just giving a nice sip of pure vodka.
And I'm actually here wearing JSTV TV
Look
yoga
at that.
leggings,
We're just prostituting ourselves left and right. How are you, partner?
Hey, we took a little bit of a rest, a little bit of a vacation, so to speak. I mean, even though we
clear
really
the cobwebs, clear the brain,
because we were planning our shows for the week, something we didn't have to do too much during the last 8 weeks. Because there's this little case called, let me see if I can remember it. Help me all. What was that case called? Everybody's on it.
It's not coming to me.
What was that case called? Come on. You could say it all out. Karen Reed, right?
Oh, that. Yeah.
I see all of you having a little bit. You missed us all, but we're going to be on pretty much every day tonight. Just to give you a little primer, as Michael Bryant would say. Tonight we're going to have our second interview, amazing interview. I know it's what's coming with Mike Easter is already waiting. He is the expert that you never got to hear. And last week when he was on, everyone was like, wow, I wish he had testified. We're going to get his reaction to the verdict tomorrow night. We're going to be doing a little, Doug Weinstein is going to be on along with Terry Austin on the Diddy case. It's a case in New York in federal court that we haven't been covering because we've been covering Karen Reed. On Wednesday night, we're going to take our second deep dive into Sandra Birchmore. As you know, she was the young woman who my husband, my Dr. Michael Baden, who's hired by the civil attorney, said was killed by a homicide. And the federal government has indicted a police officer in Stoughton, a former police officer called Matthew Farwell, for murder of a witness in federal investigation and all. So today it was announced that his appearance next July 1st, but Tubi's upset about this, next week is...
Oh, my gosh.
Oh,
I've
my God,
never
he's
heard
really
Tubi so upset.
is going to be put up to October. We'll talk about that on Wednesday.
Yeah, what could that mean?
And the new DNA test. And on Thursday, we're going to have Karen Reed Lollapalooza, everybody, starting at 6 p.m. You see, the Tubi is very upset. I mentioned the name. He's upset. Not upset at Mike Easter, but he did get upset at Sandra Birchmore. Yeah, his father's dog. Yeah.
Okay. So, very interesting. And I think Mr. Easter can talk about this. In the aftermath, as jurors have surfaced, started to chat about what made a difference to them and what didn't. I start to think, as cool as it would have been for him to testify, I'm not so sure they did need him. In retrospect, everybody on the jury seemed to think that the cops did a crap job. And I guess he would have reinforced that. But let's bring in Michael Easter, who, I don't know, is he still on vacation? Are you still on vacation, Mike?
Well, I don't want to say that I'm perpetually on vacation, but yeah. I'm actually visiting my son who lives up in Oregon now. He's a wildlands firefighter, so I'm trying to spend some time with him. Yeah, spend some time with him before he heads off to for fire season.
That's
Wow,
fabulous.
yeah.
Mine's in Oregon too. Mine's in Lincoln City, which is the coastal town. It's Oregon, but it definitely does have issues dealing with firefights.
Have they had, has your son or his colleagues been called up to Canada or any of those wildfires up there, or no?
Not his team, but yeah, parts of the crew from this area, and I think even some from California. We saw them coming through because we're out in the Deschutes National Forest, sort of, I would say maybe Central Oregon.
Okay.
And we've seen some of the California fire crews coming through. So
crazy.
I should have brought my dog. He's downstairs.
Yeah, mine's in the other room. I don't bother him when he's sleeping.
Yeah. You don't usually get to see Tubi because
no, we don't.
I'm in the downstairs studio, and he stays upstairs protecting the house. But he does need a grooming. I apologize. He apologizes.
Brother.
You see,
I was going to point that out. He's looking just rough.
He doesn't show his face, but Tubi is one of our two mascots of the show. to be the poodle, or to be or not to be from Hamlet and Shakespeare. So
He's
making
definitely a
best
cuddler.
appearance.
Yeah,
Mm,
that's
mm.
he
He's
thinks
better
he's
here
a
than I
lap
do.
dog.
Yeah, exactly.
What
Might
kind
be
of
a little
dog do you
big
have,
for that.
Michael? What kind of dog do you have?
I have a very large white lab that also
Oh,
thinks he's a lap dog.
labs.
His head's about the only thing that fits in your lap.
Yep.
So
Yep. They have. We had a silver lab until about a year and a half ago. He passed away at about 12 years old. Unbelievable dogs. They're
yeah,
the most like humans. I mean, they have like
yeah.
a
He's like my fourth kid almost.
yeah.
He,
Yeah.
and when he's not a part of things, he's like, "Am I not part of this? What's going on?"
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So
Well,
so here
so
we
this-
are again.
Here we are once again. Michael, just give us your initial thoughts on the verdict.
Well, I hate to say Judge Cannoni was right, but maybe I wasn't needed. um, I really was impressed, and it's the verdict that in my gut I felt like was going to come forward, which was the two not guilties or the acquittals there, and then the guilty for the OUI. And I'm sure Alan and the team will talk some strategy at some point of why they added parts of that OUI, but that's not for me to necessarily speak about. But yeah, I thought I don't know. I'm sure you guys have seen some of the comments from the jurors. I think there was three now, maybe that I'm not sure if there's been more, but the one that did the TMZ. I mean, could you ask for just somebody that really got what reasonable doubt was, and
Was that Jason? That was Jason.
That
Yeah,
was
Jason.
Jason.
and he really understood what the juror's job was. He really articulated, I thought, very well, and just showed a lot of I thought wisdom in a way in his response. Um, I also saw there was a female, I think her last name, or maybe it was Prado,
Right.
maybe former some legal training from Brazil, was here, right? I don't think
Yep.
she's a lawyer in the States, but also articulated very well the concept of reasonable doubt, and then the third one, I think the foreman also made a statement. And I actually really picked up on a word that he said. And he said wishy-washy privilege. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh,
And I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
I picked up on that word privilege, and I was just like, man, what a great term for how I saw this as well.
Yeah,
And
let me share with
yeah,
you more of his comments because they go directly to what could have been your testimony
right.
had it been allowed in. He said there was no aha moment. He called the cop work shoddy, which led to a blatant red flag. And then, of course, something we've been talking about since the very beginning. Quote, if that body was on my front steps, I know my house would have been stormed. And then he references
Right.
the text by Proctor. But everybody thinks that. It's just common sense. I don't care what color you are, what neighborhood you're in. There's a body on the front lawn. They're knocking on the door.
Right. 100%. And I think I liked what he said about privilege, because that concept to me was something that resonated throughout. Like, they gave privilege to the Alberts. They gave privilege to clearly the residents at 34. If everybody's hands off, we can't even go do anything with that. They gave privilege to McCabe. I think she was allowed to just sort of be the orchestrator of everybody's statements. I mean, you heard her in her trial that I got everybody together and we got our timeline together. Like that's not healthy for your investigation if everybody's recollections based on what she put together for them. And then ultimately, I thought one of the biggest privileges that was given to Higgins. I thought he was extended too much privilege, considering what his, where he was at that night, his interactions with McCabe, or I'm sorry, with O'Keefe throughout the evening that we saw in video, and of course, his. I don't know, I guess Yuri wouldn't say it, but his flirty text with Karen Reed. So yeah, I really liked the word he said, privilege, and I just resonated with me. And again, I would have enjoyed testifying, I think, but ultimately, I thought those three jurors saw through the shenanigans and saw through what juror one said was a shoddy investigation, and I think all three of them gave an opinion that there were, in fact, Jason, I think, was the one that said there were too many holes. Too many holes.
That was kind of a
That's
theme with a lot of the jurors. They use that phrase, holes.
You're right. And we saw this. You saw. I mean, I saw it earlier, clearly, in the evidence, and we saw it in trial one. I thought some of those holes might have been filled a little bit in trial one because they had more law enforcement witnesses. But Brennan really was limited in his law enforcement witnesses, or any credible law enforcement witness that came as a part of their case in chief. So.
You
I guess
think
my
that's
first
because
thought,
if he had more law enforcement witnesses, the stronger the defense would have a case to bring you in as an expert on their end?
that's an interesting question. Potentially, right? I mean, I'm sure he's thinking that he doesn't want to open the door too wide. I think Alan tried to articulate that the door was open. I still don't think it's proper to exclude somebody, not necessarily me, but somebody to come and offer an opinion based on their training and experience about the investigation. The government gets to call every law enforcement witnesses. That's clearly not going to say the investigation sucked. I mean, they're going to say it was amazing. It was wonderful. I mean, Yuri couldn't even agree that Trooper Proctor's investigation was anything but honorable and with full of integrity. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, you cringe when you hear that. It's like, really, we all read the same text and watched the same thing, right? So
Well, he couldn't even
yeah.
agree that Proctor was the lead investigator when
Yeah.
Lieutenant Colonel
He was
Noble, the head of
he-
the state police, called him that
Yeah,
and didn't fire
right.
him.
he was
Right,
assigned
and
the
that was
case.
so dishonest to me. You know what's interesting is you have to pick the areas that you want to battle on, and that I don't know that that's one I would have battled on. I think ultimately all of their witnesses, the law enforcement witnesses, were clearly not that there's anything wrong with it, but had trial prep, and in that trial prep, I think they all agreed, hey, let's try to minimize referring to him as the lead investigator.
No
Instead, let's
doubt.
make it look more like a team. We're
No
all in
doubt.
this together. And I understand that aspect, but it doesn't come across as genuine. And you even saw a couple of them, I wouldn't say slip up, but just sort of naturally go into their response. Yeah, of course he's a lead investigator. Why have a duty roster if he's not the lead investigator, right?
Yeah. Nobody's
I
in
mean, come on.
charge here. It's just,
Right.
a group effort. Hey, I want to get
Right.
your reaction to two different things. Let's start with the first one here. Let me see if I can pull this up. This was just the other day, and I want to cue it up. So don't mind my flipping and flopping
Is this
around
going
here.
to be Michel
wanna-
Duffy has a question, I think, on this. Is this the tape of Brian Albert?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Michel Duffy
So-
has that question. Michel, I'm not even going to say your question because you're going to get their answer.
Okay. So let me see if I can
criminal
cue this
justice
up
system
properly.
has
Yeah. Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah. I couldn't stand to watch this, but I just think this one particular
Right.
question and answer as it relates to what you've talked about, Michael, is so important. This is
Canton police officer. I'm a Boston police officer. I was just woken up out of a cold sleep from hanging out the night before. By the time I came downstairs, the police were already in my house. John was already gone. There was nobody to save. I would have taken a bullet for John O'Keefe because he was a fellow cop. That's the most ridiculous question that people always ask. It made zero sense. What am I supposed to do? Run out front in my underwear and start running yellow tape around the fire hydrant?
Over the course of
how about yes?
Yeah.
How about sure? Do it, in the words of Alan
Right.
Jackson. Do it.
Well, you know what's interesting is when he says he's not a Canton police officer, but the John O'Keefe's a Boston cop, and he was a Boston cop. I mean, that's your brother. I would have started the coffee pot. I would have started making breakfast. I mean, I would have opened my doors. I would have said, "Hey, guys, come in out of the cold. If you need a place to huddle, I have a command post. The command post could be in my garage. It could be in my living room. Let me know what resources I can start calling in from Boston. What assistance do you need?" His actions to me defy logic, and his response is it's disappointing. And I think he is now trying to preserve his reputation. That would be my opinion. And the answer is yes. You should have ran out there in your underwear or taken 15 seconds to put on some shoes and pants and gone out and do your job. Even though you may not have been on duty, your job is it never ends. Doesn't end whether you come or off shift or on shift. You are an off-duty police officer. and you have responsibilities to serve. And I don't understand his response. It doesn't make sense to me.
You know, it's almost like he's just kind of reinforcing what the team, McAlbert team, has been putting out there, suggesting that this is am I crazy? Well, that would be insane. Just like the people who say it's impossible to keep a conspiracy intact. He goes on to say, yeah, that would take 30 or 40 people. No, it wouldn't. Those people sitting in those chairs just to say, John O'Keefe never came in the house. That's all you needed, and that's all they got. So that theme they've been continuing to spew, that the conspiracy would be impossible to keep, and that he'd be insane to go out on his own front yard when this was unfolding.
Right.
I don't know how anybody believes that.
And also, didn't he? He said, didn't he? Let me ask you this. He said the cops had already been in my house. I don't think they had been in his house.
I don't think so either.
I think that was that statement is inaccurate. Let me put it that way.
I would say it's inconsistent with prior testimony and the evidence, right? And it's inconsistent because we even saw in this trial that Jennifer McCabe had to go in and wake them up, right? I think we remember that on cross-examination. I think Alan Jackson was crossing her, if I recall correctly. And he asked her about, was there a dog sleep in the room? Did the dog make any noise, you know? And she's like, yeah, to go in there and wake them up from their bed. So when he says they're already in his house, it's inconsistent with the statements. But what you said, Michael, I totally agree. Maybe just add that one thing to what Michael was saying is, what's funny is he acts as though his actions, people can't believe it. It's like, well, or no, he's kind of the mind, I can't believe people think I should have gone out there. And the reality is everyone really thinks we can't believe you didn't go out there. And so it's like, I actually think he would have come across as more credible if he just said, you know what, I was asleep.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting. That's what I expected, just some oblivion. And then you're at least going, well, he was drinking, maybe, you know?
Yeah, maybe he sleeps with a, what are those things that people have trouble sleeping?
The CPAP?
Right,
the
CPAP thing? A white noise.
I would have come up with that as a story before.
As we know from the first trial, because there were a lot of butt dials and butt answers, there was a lot of sex going on. That's from the first trial. We didn't hear it in the second trial. So he, of course, would have been exhausted and passed out between the alcohol and sex. But to just make it sound like it would have been foolish to go out makes him look like an asshole.
Richie from Drop Microdots is here, by the way, one of the great heroes of this trial. Also, it's his sweatshirt that he sells on his website that Criminals Run Norfolk County that Erica Wash was wearing when she was taken down and arrested. At least they had one arrest out of this case, maybe two.
And if you haven't seen his latest work, it's great. He takes that bits and pieces of the interview we just saw a piece of and puts it together. It's very good for those who haven't seen that yet.
And speaking of the dog, Mike, and we have another question. I should call you Mr. Easter. I apologize. I'm used to
you can call me Mike.
We get very familiar here. Sorry.
I'm used to dealing with experts, as in trials, and so on first name basis. But
I'm not hung up on titles, so please.
Okay. And the juror number 11, Mrs. Prado. As for the dog, no one saw it. It didn't bark with all the movement outside, and it didn't react when Jen McCabe entered the house that morning at the 6. So where was it during the 6 a.m. blizzard, and why was it missing without its owner? And then she said later on when she left it, she learned that the dog had been also rehomed. So that's how they thought about the dog, with regard to that. Now I know that's not police procedures, but they're coming up with all the things that we all thought.
Common sense, crazy. People actually having common sense type questions.
Yeah, and I would just go to things that raise suspicion, right? Because they're not normal. Clearly, we talked about Albert not coming out, getting rid of your dog immediately after, throwing away your phones. Things just start to look suspicious. And when that old saying, when there's smoke, there's fire. It just, I would even add all of them, the Alberts, the McCabes, doing that interview together. I even thought that was a poor optic. I would hope they would have consulted with somebody. Maybe we don't, people are considering us as part of this conspiracy. Maybe we just don't go do an interview right after where we're all saying the same story again.
I was surprised. I was surprised that Proctor was made the focus of, I think it was 2020. I can't remember which one it was. That surprised me. And then to see this, Murderer's Row sit there and give their interview. I thought it was classless and shocking.
Agreed.
And it came right on the heels of their statement, which was equally classless.
Right.
Speaking of statements, I wanted to get your take on this too, because
Micro dots, by the way. Richie said this is why this channel has some of the best coverage, because we bring you the best experts and what you
There you
didn't
go.
hear at the trial. And speaking about Proctor, we do have that specific question, Michael, before statements. What does Mike think of Proctor's new statements? And I thought that was unseemly in and of itself. 2020, and I don't usually like to attack media. 2020 comes out with this interview the same night that Karen Reed is fought 3.5 years to be exonerated, and Proctor it comes out with this thing that he's basically says, I wouldn't have done anything differently as far as I was concerned.
It's
former Trooper Proctor. Yes.
Yeah. And, as a former Marine, I would like to refer to Trooper Proctor as an ex-trooper, because former sort of dignifies some respect. That
You're right. Could be retired, could be something other than just.
I would like to strip him of anything that says former and just refer to him as an ex.
Okay. He was rehomed.
I think I can't imagine there's a law enforcement agency in this universe that would hire him again. I'm not surprised by Trooper Proctor's statements. I want to be professional here. Having looked at what the reports that Trooper Proctor wrote and the quality of those reports and the nature of how he conducted this investigation, I'm not surprised that he would make those statements again. I just think it's indicative of what I think I talked about last time, this culture of, hey, if I say it, it is. And Yuri said it. Remember on the stand, it was really, for me, it was like, oh God, that's horrible. When he said, he told, whoever was doing the cross-examination, I think it was Alan, and he said, if a trooper wrote it down, I'll consider it gospel. And it's like that privilege, back to privilege from your juror, that privilege doesn't exist anymore in law enforcement. Just because you say it happened doesn't mean it happened anymore. We lost that privilege decades ago. And you can't just go around saying, well, if I say it happened the way it happened, it happened. And they did that with evidence. Remember, you even hear Yuri, well, why would I have a chain of custody? I told you what I did with it. It's like, that's not good enough anymore in the country, right? Somebody hasn't told you that yet, that we get.
Did you not watch the OJ trial? Did you not watch Rodney King?
Yeah.
Joanne Jennifer loves the fact that rehome trooper, by the way. Somebody else has a question. XYU, us. Mr. Easter, do you have an opinion about the lack of blue support during the trial? Is there a meaning to it? Is there an underlying meaning to that lack of support? Because we're all surprised about that.
So when they say blue support, like law enforcement sort of appearing at the doorsteps of the courthouse as well to sort of rally.
Right.
I don't know this definitively, but from my experience in large cases like this, we would normally get a directive that says you are prohibited from appearing at the courthouse.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Interesting.
I don't know that happened specifically, but I've had big cases where you are not going to go there and create a scene of all these law enforcement people, rallying and protesting against the other citizens, so to speak. Could you imagine the optic? I think the optic would look even worse than it would look good for them.
Interesting, because I know a lot of people did mention that.
That would be my sort of law enforcement reaction to that. Is it's not uncommon for law enforcement members in big cases to be directed not to appear biased or as protesting. We're not, especially the FBI. The FBI is very adverse to you going out there and making a nuisance of yourself in the public. So,
well, and just so people know, and I saw it pass in the chat, there was a pretrial order that law enforcement were not allowed to wear uniforms in the courthouse.
Yeah.
So, but I think the fact is the place was so small, everybody knew who was and wasn't there. So I don't even think there were any law enforcement officers in plain clothes, except if they were related to the investigation or a support team or going to be called as a witness. You're right. They weren't going to have row after row of uniformed officer anyway. That wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. I think it's a reasonable suspicion is that they were probably directed not to go there and show their support, do it remotely, write a letter or something. Maybe I don't know what they were told specifically, but that would be my gut reaction to it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at this recent statement This is made by, let me see if I can blow it up just a touch without losing it. And then I will, whoops, that's too much. I will attempt to read this. This is from
yeah.
Hank Brennan. I am disappointed in the verdict and the fact that we could not achieve justice for John O'Keefe and his family. District Attorney Michael Marcy appointed me, giving me full discretion for independently assessing the case and follow the evidence no matter where it led. After an independent and thorough review of all the evidence, I concluded that the evidence led to one person and only one person. Neither the closed federal investigation nor my independent review led me to identify any other possible suspect or person responsible for the death of John O'Keefe. The campaign of intimidation and abuse that has been waged, funded, and promoted in public and on social media is the antithesis of justice. If this type of conduct becomes commonplace, it will threaten the integrity of our judicial system, affecting both victims and criminally accused. We cannot condone witness abuse, causing participants to worry about their own safety or that of their families. It is my hope that with the verdict, the witnesses and their families will be left alone. The harassment of those innocent victims and family members is deplorable and should never happen again in a case in this Commonwealth. My heartfelt condolences to the O'Keefe family and faith that over the coming years, they will find peace. So that's Hank Brennan.
Enclosure. You forgot enclosure. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, there it is. Enclosure. Closure.
Yeah.
So that's Hank Brennan. Thoughts?
Yeah, I as you read it, I'm familiar with it. I pick up on four things. First, the closed federal investigation. I've worked for the FBI for over 20 years. I've never found them to tell unrelated party whether a case was closed or open still. And so I find that disingenuous. I don't think he truly knows whether the case is closed or not. And the FBI oftentimes, and I would even say the FBI is maybe not the right response, but the DOJ, the DOJ doesn't really close a case. Let's be honest. They may pause a case. But the DOJ and the FBI are very good at being patient. And you'll see patience by them. It could be months, it could be years, it could be even longer. They're not in a hurry. Time's on their side. They have collected what they need, and they're going to let things play out and mature a little bit. I've never found the DOJ to make a impulsive decision ever. And you're probably dealing with some extreme experienced U.S. attorneys that were assigned this case. So I can't imagine they told him definitively, Mr. Brennan, don't worry, this case has been closed. I don't. I've never had that experience, so I don't know how he got it. The second one that I picked up on was all of this suggested one person, and I think it comes back to, of course it does. Of course it does. Because remember, we talked about privilege already. I got another P word for you, is that they were prejudiced. The investigation was prejudiced or biased towards Karen Reed. It was biased towards the theory on day one of January 29th that Karen Reed did it, and she did it with her car. They never investigated anything else. There was never any other theory, right? So they were prejudiced towards her, clearly. The one you mentioned, the evidence, and it's sort of a piggyback to the prejudice concept, is that, of course, the evidence only suggests Karen Reed as their suspect. They only took evidence of her. She's the only one cell phone records they got. Her vehicle is the only vehicle they examined. And by the time they arrested her on February 1st, they'd only interviewed Jennifer McCabe, Kerry Roberts. And of course, Kerry Roberts was with Jennifer McCabe when she got interviewed, right? She was I think they were at her house. And Matthew McCabe. That's it. And we have Trooper Paul's CARS report on 2-1. He did that examination on 2-1. And later that day, they arrest Karen Reed. I mean, we're talking lightning fast arrest. What had been done at that point? So there was no evidence early on, clearly. And even as the case progressed, clearly trials years later, I mean, can we even really point to any evidence? And the answer is no. I mean, what's interesting is Brennan thinks all that evidence only suggests one person. And in all of his experience, he can only see that. But guess what? 12 jurors with limited to no experience in the judicial system, uh, all unanimously disagree with his opinion. Right? That's pretty powerful, I think. Not one person thought, you know what, that was convincing. And then lastly, I would say intimidation. I picked up on that word because to me, I thought the intimidation went the other way. Uh, I think about intimidating it must have been for Karen Reed to be the sole target for so long of a privileged investigation, a biased investigation, or prejudiced investigation. And I hear maybe I got a third P for you, Linda. I know you like the power of
Yeah,
three.
I love it.
A premature case. Remember, we talked about it a little earlier.
Right.
That case was she was arrested prematurely, and after that, it was like I think Alan may have said it. Pin it on the girl. Pin it on the girl.
Yeah. And you remember, I haven't heard a juror say this specifically, but the text from Matt McCabe saying that if she takes a plea, this will end, but otherwise it's going to be an episode. That I would think that would have resonated with them when it happened so early, and it's so consistent with this concept you suggested, this targeting concept.
Right.
Maybe there was just so much that nobody's zeroed in on that specifically, but it had to have made an impression, I think.
Yeah, I think they underestimated their opponent.
Yeah. Oh, and no doubt about that. No doubt about that. They underestimated the woman who they thought that they looked at her like he looked at the text. Right? She's got a. Not only want to repeat this stuff because it was so disgusting.
Let's just say she has a Fall River accent.
Yeah,
and they focused on that.
So Richard Microdots, I have two questions really for you. One talks about the witness intimidation you just mentioned. Richard Microdots says, what does Mr. Easter, think of the reason he wasn't allowed? That the public already know investigation. What do you think the real reason behind that was?
I'll share my opinion. I personally think Judge Kenney does not like Alan Jackson. I don't think that's a surprise. And I think anytime he tries to come up with a good idea, she's not inclined to accept it. And I thought for her, the judge, to make that ruling, I don't ever recall her making a decision that was based on any legal substance. It was just, I don't think he should be allowed to come talk about these things. Remember, she said, what, are we going to just have the Commonwealth bring in people and say how good the investigation was? And Alan said, do it. Right. And so there were often times that, I'm not a lawyer, but I like to play one here on YouTube sometimes, but is I never found that she would make rulings based on some type of law or legal precedence. Like it was like some judicial ruling. She's just like, nah, I'll allow it, or no, I'm not going to allow it.
Anywhere there was the opening for her to have judicial discretion.
Yeah,
she took full advantage of it.
Yeah,
because she would think on appeal that's going to be upheld. The appellate court's going to defer to the trial court unless it is so out of whack with the law and the state of the evidence that it can become an issue. So she took full advantage of that.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe I answer this question a little more clear. Give 2 points to it. I think that the Judge Kenney definitely was not inclined to give things to the defense in this case, and especially because of Alan Jackson. That's my opinion. I don't have any.
No, I agree with you. I've said that
it was obvious.
She didn't like Alan Jackson for some reason. Now, Alan's been my opponent. I totally respect Alan Jackson. I would call Alan Jackson my friend as we came through the wars together on opposite sides. I think Alan Jackson was brilliant. I think Alan Jackson gave the best closing I have ever seen. I think Alan Jackson's opening where he said, "Wait for us," is do it. And then the collision with the three of not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. I thought he was brilliant. And when he went back at her and said, I have grave concerns at the very end, he was giving, at that point, he's representing his client like all people should do. He'll go to jail for his client. And I thought he was fabulous. And her not allowing you in, I think, was absolutely personal to him. I agree with you.
So I agree with you. That's my opinion, my first opinion. The second one, but I want to add a little thing since you said it, is I've also been an opponent of Alan Jackson. I've been cross-examined by him a couple of times myself when I was a government witness. So it's interesting is when he reached out, I said, you know what, Alan, I would happy to help you. And he's like, really? I said, yeah. I said, you know why? Because every time you and I interacted, you were a professional. He didn't make it personal between us. He was a professional about it. And I have a lot of respect for that. In fact, I tend to look at attorneys as advocates or believers, and he's just an advocate. He doesn't overdo it to make it personal. He's advocating for his client. I always thought of Alan as a professional, and so out of respect for that, yeah, I had no problem helping him in his case. So the second reason, though, I think is, and it's a greater sort of interaction with and sort of the roles in this case is I thought Judge Kenney had too much of her thumb on the scale for the prosecution. And I think she knew, clearly she would have read my report and she would have seen my background and training.
Good point. Good point. She would have read your report.
She would have read it. And I think she realized that this is it's I don't want to overstate my report because it's maybe I'm being too excited about my own report but I think it would have been the last person to testify would have probably been me after ARC or maybe slightly before, and it would have been a death blow, I think, to their investigation. It would have and I look at it this way, maybe add to that aspect is think of the quality and the credibility of the witnesses that the Commonwealth brought forward. We could look at Burgess, we could look at Welcher, we could look at, I keep thinking Dever was a Commonwealth witness, but God, I didn't think Yuri Buchanan was an incredibly effective witness as well. And then we look at what the defense brought. The defense brought the quality of the witness, the credibility. And I just think it was almost like a piling on. If I show up and I start piling on, I just think Judge Kenney was like, I just can't let this happen. This is just going to be a death blow to the case. That's how because she already clearly knew ARCA was, if we look at ARCA and Aperture, I mean, there's no comparison to the quality of these two companies and even the witnesses from those things. And then I think, I personally think I would have been a very effective witness for the defense, but ultimately, Michael, you said it. The jury saw through the nonsense. They saw the holes and they saw the privilege.
I think when not the former juror 11, Paula said in the interview with Aidan Carney last night, Dr. Turtleboy, that she was unimpressed with Judson Welcher because when she went to the jury view, the car was there. And so she put her arm up against it to see whether an arm could hit the car if you lean. She said, I did that for free. It didn't charge $435,000 or something.
Yeah. I don't think that sat well with the jury, that Mickey Mouse paint test, as it became known, and the money he made.
I heard somebody describe it as an elementary school science project, and I think that does a disservice to elementary school kids.
Hey, before you glossed over this before, I want to mention it. It says something that Alan Jackson came to you after you were opposing him in another case. That means he respected you, what you did, had nothing to do with the side that he was arguing at that time, but he thought you could help him in his case. So don't cheat yourself out of that.
Yeah, no, and what's interesting, I was like, wow, Alan Jackson called me, I thought that was impressive. I'm sure he's got a lot of people he could call. I would say that initially, if you think back though, to remember what our initial, why Alan originally reached out to me, it was because of the mappings that Trooper Tully did.
Right.
And gosh, don't get me started on Trooper Tully, but he wrote a report and he did grand jury testimony. I was asked to review that, and not only was his grand jury testimony inaccurate, his maps were, I thought, misleading, and ultimately his testimony was clearly biased towards a narrative that she went back originally to 34 Fairview before 6 o'clock, which clearly is unsupported, and he had to retract a lot of stuff. And you see, he didn't even come back to testify again. He was so poor. And maybe your audience doesn't know this, but I think Trooper Tully had an enormous role in this investigation that was never really highlighted. When I looked at all the reports, the number one, all the reports that I remember, I think I talked about this, Linda. There's a lot of the reports that I thought should have been red flags. He reproved them. He approved all of them.
You said that, right? He approved.
Yeah, he approved almost everything. In fact, he was one of the guys at January 29th when CERT did the initial search, right?
I think he was present at all of those subsequent searches too.
Right.
2-3, 2-8, 2-10, 2-11. Each of the searches that kept revealing new pieces of taillight.
Yeah, I think it, from my perspective, I think he is an enormous reason why they have such deficiencies over there. He's the lieutenant. He would be above Yuri Buchanan, who's the sergeant, and sergeant are clearly above Trooper Proctor. But when you look at the hierarchy, and I look at the way the directives were sort of filtering down from, at times you would read a report. Trooper Tully told me to go do these things. Trooper Tully told me to write a report.
Right.
And it's telling that he just his finger was on everything. And I mean, I actually really surprised he didn't get demoted, honestly, from what I see.
So we have there's my dog. There's two big. We have about like about 20 questions lined up here. Julie
Yeah,
D.
let's do 'em.
Julie, let's go. Given the ridiculous investigation, and in quotes, do you think anyone actually will be charged later? Higgins last year gave me vibes of guilt, eating him alive, and eventually will crack. That's her view. And for those who don't know, remember, he's the one who went to the Army base knowing there was going to be a preservation order for his phone coming down. He went to a federal Army base. He got rid of a SIM card in one area, broke it in half, got rid of his phone. He separated and put those in different garbage bags at a federal Army base where the preservation order wouldn't have it, and then changed his carrier. For those of us that know. I think I have that right, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually wrote an entire page about Higgins in my report. And would you like me to address a little bit of that, or
yes, yeah, go ahead. That's
okay. I think
I apologize.
Higgins,
my dog is having a conniption here.
that's right. I can work through it. I've had people screaming at me while I'm trying to answer questions on the stand, so whatever. For me, Brian Higgins would have been a primary suspect right from jump. He would have been a primary suspect for me, not because I would have known immediately that he returned to the Canton Police Department to do what he described as administrative functions, but because on February 3rd, so just a couple days later, he is interviewed, and in his interviews, he has already, by February 3rd, so January 29th, February 3rd, he's already interacted with a FBI agent, which we all know that was improper, to download certain text messages between him and Karen Reed, right? He'd already done that. He had those printouts and a copy of them available for the Trooper Proctor and Yuri Buchanan when they did the interview. And he had his attorney present, right? So if I show up to you and I've identified you as a witness and I'm here for a witness interview, and you've already put up a roadblock to your evidence, to evidence that I may seek, right? You've basically collected on your own, and like, here, I want you to look at this, but I don't want you to look at anything else. I'd be sitting there, why is he being so helpful to me right now? But helpful in a suspicious way. And listen, I think nowadays I would tell everybody, if you're going to get interviewed by law enforcement, know what your rights are. Maybe a consult with an attorney. But Brian Higgins, it's like, hey man, we work together. We know each other, right? I mean, hey man, we're just going to talk to you. We need to check some bases here. And when he had his attorney, I would have been like nudging Yuri, been like, man, hey, this is really suspicious. I mean, highly suspicious. So I would have then, and I wrote in my report, I would have taken a step back. I would have now made Higgins a suspect. And I would have made him a suspect, regardless of what Higgins does with his physical device. His cell phone carrier would have had all his calls. I think he was Verizon initially, so we would have seen text, but we wouldn't have seen cell site for text. He would have had signaling or time in advance that's similar to Karen Reed. Think of distance from tower and data sessions. And what I put in there was they should have got those to determine whether or not his statements of going to the military base were true and accurate, that his device was destroyed. Because we would have seen that disconnect from the network of that device. We could have just verified that he did that, which I still think is highly suspicious. And what was his new account? And because he had an iPhone, did he have an iCloud account? Why couldn't we go back and request his iCloud account? Did he sync up his new device to his old iCloud account? If he did, then things that are on his new device were on his old device, right?
Yeah, this is interesting, Michael. I know this is your specialty, so let me ask this question because I'm a dummy about this. I don't know.
Yeah.
So if I swap out from Spectrum, go to Verizon, which I would never do, you can't access my Spectrum former information that was recorded when I was with that provider?
No, we can. So maybe I'll just address it. Everybody probably has different cellular provider. The reality is in the U.S., and I'm just going to address the top three: Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. Almost every other, what they refer to as a mobile virtual network operator, or MVNO, is using towers from one of those three. There may be there's a couple out there, US Cellular. I think probably US Cellular's in the Northeast. I know they're in the Northwest. And Dish Network has some of their own cell sites through Boost Mobile now. But that's a whole nother class we'd give. But the reality is, those three carriers, let's just address them. Verizon keeps historical cell phone records. That's all for calls, VoLTE and 5G, for a rolling calendar year. So I could have looked at all of your calls, incoming and outgoing, and the cell tower that your phone used for a rolling calendar year. They do not keep cell sites for text messages or MMS, right? But they do keep text messages for data sessions. So we could have seen data session cell sites. They also keep something that's a little more nuanced, but they refer to it as RTT. For them, it's real-time tool. For those of your audience that may have heard of it before, it's timing advance. So if you think of a tower projecting its coverage, let's say north, you would also get an access distance or a ring or an arcs, maybe a better example, of how far the phone was. And we had that in the Karen Reed case, or for Karen Reed's phone. So to answer your question, Mike, yes, a year for Verizon. If it's AT&T, 5 years. And they
Wow.
keep cell sites for voice, SMS, and data. They also have time in advance, or that ARC, distance from tower. They even have another thing, which they refer to as the precision location information, which, depending on the time of year or time period, it would have been called Nellis or Loc Debor. And this is information that would be latitude, longitudes with rings of uncertainty, like we saw for the GPS from the Waze. May not be quite as precise as we saw in the Waze, but again, indicative of where this device was. And guess who has an AT&T phone? It's John O'Keefe.
Higgins? Who?
John O'Keefe.
Oh,
John O'Keefe.
Okay.
And I want to add, I'll add to that in a sec, but then T-Mobile's 2 years. T-Mobile has voice, text, and data sessions for rolling for up to 2 years, and they have timing advanced ARCs as well. I mean, it's the fact that, and so the reason I say the victim, John O'Keefe, I taught and I created a course for the FBI called Critical Incident Response Assessment. And it's an assessment where we would put agents through to determine their ability to respond to a critical incident and conduct an effective investigative process. And the first practical I ever made, scenario that I ever made for this course, dealt with there's no phone except the victim's phone. And it's interesting, a lot of people don't always instantly get the victim phone that don't have a lot of training, because they're like, well, we know where the victim is, they're right here. But as you'll learn, and or maybe you guys probably know this, but as people will learn, especially investigators, is in most cases the victim came into contact or interacted with their assailant across the timeline prior to their death. And so we really got to create a timeline of where was the victim and the hours and days, sometimes leading up to their death, and what was their phone doing after they died. Did somebody pick it up? Did somebody make a phone call? Right? We could have determined some of these things instead of they're trying to use his health data. I'm not saying that's improper, but and then the battery temperature. It's like, well, why didn't you just get his AT&T phone records? We could see if there were any additional activity.
Interesting.
Right? I'm still blown away, and that's where I was saying, like, how did we not get these things? I mean, it defies logic to me. You would have failed my critical incident course if you did not get the victim. You wouldn't have passed practical one.
I actually have a little Jeopardy trivia question. And going back way when the towers were set up and other carriers rented the access to them, just for all you know, follow the money, because that was all about billing, right? So if you had the AT&T, if AT&T had a tower and your T-Mobile customer passed by a tower at that time, they didn't have towers, they would get billed by by AT&T for the use of the tower. And that's where this all started, the keeping of records a long time ago, just in case you're ever on Jeopardy and you want to know.
Right, and I
money,
totally agree.
right?
In fact, we teach agents that regarding this, that the fundamental aspect of cell site records wasn't necessarily to keep track of your cell site activity, but to keep track of billable events. Right, we want to make sure, oh, that wasn't our tower. You owe
It's
a little
always
extra.
about the money.
So
You know,
yeah, that really blew that blew me away. Did I answer the question? So but I think there's another point for Higgins. Let's stay on Higgins for a second, if you don't mind.
No, I don't
Okay,
mind, but you're going to be
so
here for about 2
Higgins.
hours because we have so many questions. I know
Okay.
you're so smart. These questions are so smart.
So let's just accept Higgins throws his phone on the destroys the SIM card in an iPhone 11, which I got a drawer full of cell phones. I don't know why he destroyed it. Okay, that thing actually would have been worth quite a bit of money in a trade-in, right? I don't. It just, again, illogical and suspicious. Remember what Higgins' job is. Everybody remembers, right? I hope he's an ATF agent.
Sure.
Okay. I'm a federal agent, or well, not anymore. I was a federal agent, and here's what I know about the ATF and FBI agents and other federal agents. You have a work phone. You are given a work phone, right? Do you think Agent Higgins threw away his work phone? No, because it's on your property. It's on your inventory. You don't destroy your property, your work phone. So, why didn't they go to the ATF or to his carrier? Some of the feds use different carriers. I think around this time we would have been right at Verizon or cusped over to AT&T. So let's just say his personal phone gets dumped. I'm getting his work phone. I'm going to do this to the phone carrier, and I'm getting his call detail records, his cell site records, text message, and all that stuff for his work phone. Because guess what? I'm pretty sure he would have kept his work phone on. Was on me 24/7. In fact, I still have two phones, right? I mean, I have one for work and one for personal because the type of cases I work, if somebody wants my text messages or content with people, I don't want my personal stuff intermingled with those things. And an ATF agent would have done the same thing, right? Plus, little bit behind the curtain here is that the Department of Justice has an app on every federal agent's phone that tracks GPS, and so he would have had GPS readings nonstop on his device. And I know this because I've worked some investigations to look into improper activity of federal agents. So the Canton Police Department, Massachusetts State Police Department, made no effort to determine whether he had a second mobile device for work, made no effort to obtain phone records for his personal device or his work device. And it would have been something immediately after that interview. I would have gone to the prosecution's office, because typically in these types of cases, you're already consulting with prosecutors. Hey, this is where we're at. What do you think? What do we need to collect? You know, it's intimate. It's not separate at that point. It would never be. And I would have said, hey, this is where we're at. Well, how do we want to proceed? He says he's already got an attorney. What are my investigative steps that you're going to allow me to get? I probably would have done a pin register on him as well. I would have gone full tilt.
Explain to everybody what a pin register is in case they don't know.
Yeah, a pin register is, think of it as real-time cell phone records. So incoming, outgoing communications, I get to see them in real time, not the content. Okay, that'd be a Title III, but I get to see the who you're communicating with and the cell tower that you're using to communicate with in real time. So I could see after our interview, hey, who's he calling? And then we would typically, in my world, we would then, I would say, what we used to call tickle the wire, but basically do things to make him do things, right? And so we would have probably interviewed him again. Hey, we want to talk to you again. Some things aren't checking out. And then right afterwards, we would have looked at the pin register and said, who did he call right after that, right? And ultimately, he's the butt dial guy, right? Him and Albert. Why didn't we get their phone records to determine whether they're answered? And maybe your audience will find this interesting. If you got somebody like me to look at their individual call detail records, I can tell whether the call was answered or routed to voicemail.
Right. Let me ask you a follow-up on the PIN. How does that manifest itself? Do you get a printout? Is it an electronic printout? What do you see?
Yeah, you would. These days, it's all electronic. Even back in the case of this, we call them a pen box, and it's basically a computer. And some of it's even on my phone, or not anymore. I keep thinking now I don't get those privileges anymore. But yeah, pen register, we would see it in real time right through a computer system. I could log in. I could be out in the field following the guy around, watching to see who he's calling in real time.
Wow.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
Microdots brings up again another interesting point. And by the way, I'm going to get to all your super chats, but while we have Mike Easter on, we're going to try to do the questions related specifically to his investigation and how he didn't testify. And Olivia Lambo brought this up when she was on when it was the day of the verdict, and we didn't know a verdict was coming in that day. She said, "Where's the geofence? Where are the geofence records? Why didn't they get the geofence records?" So Microsoft says, "What are the chances the feds have the geofence for 34 Fairview?" So what I'd like you to do is tell people what a geofence is.
Right.
Do you know whether or not there was a preservation letter for any of this going to the Google Cloud? And, what are the chances the feds have the geofence?
I know the answers to these.
I don't know if whatever you can tell. We don't want you to reveal secrets you can't,
No, I don't have any secrets anymore. I don't work for anybody. Actually, I do have a lot of secrets, but let's address the geofence. I think it's important. The word geofence is really only consistent with Google reverse location history. So until recently, in around this time period of this case, a geofence would have been an effective tool. And to alleviate any surprise, they did. Trooper Proctor did do a geofence warrant. And he did a geofence warrant for Google, but he did the let me explain what a geofence is. So Google, typically through an Android device with a Google ID, and even some iPhones that are running Google platforms, they would have had to have given Google permission to collect location information. Historically, prior to this trial, a Google geofence was out of this world. And that's because the default for the Google application was for the user to already be opted in to provide location information. Now the user, the way the platform is designed is that it's not a default that you opted into location. Instead, now the user has to agree to give it. And if you ever had an Android device or something like that, it'll say, do you agree to give your location information to Google for diagnostics and all these kind of nonsense? Really, they're just tracking you to sell your information. But so what you could have done, and we still do this today, is a geofence. Think of it as a box or a rectangle. Is that you would identify for Google an area that you want to search, a geofence or an area, think of it. And I'm using my hands here somewhat hopefully to describe this, but you would put a box and you would identify the latitude, longitudes of the corners of the box, and you would make a map and show the Google. This is where I want you to identify whether or not a Google reverse location information was inside this box, right? The thing with the Google location history these days, and especially during this time, is that um, it it's not as effective anymore at collecting users because users have learned to opt out of letting Google collect their location information. Okay, and so we don't see that as much. So with that understanding, when you look at this box, I've used it. Typically, we use it a lot in cases where there's multiple locations. We want to find a common device across multiple locations, but this could be just as effective as a static. Trooper Proctor did write a geofence warrant to Google, and Google returned nothing from it. They had no devices registered within it. I think that's in part because of what I've just described, but I think it's also in part because Trooper Proctor had no training on how to actually create the box correctly.
Yeah.
He drew the box to only cover the edge of the road and 34 Fairview. So it only is going to collect people at the residence. Well, we already don't we know who's there?
Yeah, not the coming and going from a broader area.
I personally would have drawn a couple boxes. I would have drawn 34 Fairview like he did because I want to see it. But I would have drawn a more rectangular box along Fairview Road to the intersections.
Yeah.
And I think one was Chapman. This is from memory, so I hope your viewers don't. Oh my God!
Cedar Crest was the one nearest to the property.
So I would have done that rectangle, and then I would have done another rectangle sideways at the intersections to see who was coming and going, and whether I can pick off people coming through. So I would have done more. I would have done it more for route detection.
Oh, wow.
Personally.
That's different. Right. That's different.
Yeah, I would have
Now,
done it that way. But what's interesting is most people don't know this, that the geofence is probably the. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it; I'd still do it, but it's not high on my list of immediate things to do. In fact, the first thing I would have done is an area search. An area search can be done by cellular providers, T-Mobile and AT&T do an area search where we put a latitude, longitude, and a circle, and we say any mobile device signaling within that circle. Now we're not relying on people using Google. It's a carrier-based thing, AT&T and T-Mobile. Verizon has something similar, but they call it an RTT, tower dump. So now I'm tower dumping Verizon towers that have signaling information, and I just look for all the signals that intersect the area I want, and I extract those out. This is what I used. I don't know if I could say that.
no, I think, by the way, just I'll give it.
uh,
I think in the Koberger case
Right.
that they use that in Idaho. I think they use that whole tower dump.
Yeah, I
what
actually was
came
part
to
of
the
that case.
intersections. Yeah. But,
Yeah, I worked on that case when
why
I was
did
in
I figure
bureau.
that out? Why do I figure that out? Okay.
You should see in that case some really great FBI witnesses. The guys that were the lead on those, I assisted with them remotely because of the volume of the information. But if the two guys that I know that really did the bulk of the work testify, maybe we have a conversation. Maybe I'm biased to them because I was their instructor, but they are incredible guys.
So fan of the truth, and brings up to when I watch cold case, they often use a cell phone expert that uses cell activity in areas versus using the phone. Can this be used if a new investigation happens?
Well, so they've preserved what they can for a Verizon phone. Anybody running Verizon, unless the feds were to have obtained it, it doesn't exist anymore. We're beyond the retention period for a Verizon phone for January 29th, 2022. We're not beyond the retention period for AT&T, and because we have 5 years. T-Mobile, we're beyond it, right? Because that would have
2
been
years.
2024, January 2024. So the answer is this, fan of the truth, 100%. In fact, the cell phone records are almost a default these days. In fact, I do mostly with LAPD, LEDA. Like it is like the number one investigative technique used. And so when I didn't see that, it really raised red flags for me that they have no training or they just didn't want to see it.
Or they didn't want to see it. Really interesting. Kelly Reed and Michael. I think you met Kelly, right? Kelly, you read Michael Bryant.
Yeah, she came up and said hi at the campus, the Justice Serve TV campus there in Dedham. Very nice. She was very nice to congratulate us on our coverage, and she was very nice. So she's got a question for us.
Imagine she's got a question.
Imagine how different things could have been if they'd done any of this during the investigation.
It would have been you don't have to imagine. I know it would have been is that you would have filled in the gaps of timelines a lot. You would have had a better anchor for time for John O'Keefe than trying to do his GPS. We would have had AT&T to sync to. Just a more robust investigation all around. We could have determined when people left 34 Fairview, when went back to their personal residence after the party. We wouldn't have to wonder about these things or deal with their recollection of time. I've never found witnesses, especially ones that have been out drinking all night, to have a very good recollection of time.
Yeah, interesting if it were to actually happen, and maybe I'm in fairy tale land here, but if they were to pick up or continue an investigation, that information would be important if they could get it. Again, it would depend on the provider, how long they keep the records. But if they're going to reopen an investigation, you'd want that information.
Yeah, if I was consulting them and they didn't intend to necessarily reopen the investigation, but put it categorized as cold case, I would tell them before you stop, you need to write the warrant for John O'Keefe's cell phone records. From AT&T.
That is so amazing that wasn't done.
Crazy. Are you surprised, Michael, that each of these cell phone providers, it's kind of the Wild West, they're doing it for their own purposes, this decision as to how far back they will retain records? I'm actually surprised it hasn't become sort of either an industry standard or even a federal regulation standard, because if FCC has some control over what they do, I don't know. Do you see anything in the future becoming consistent for the time a provider is required to retain those records?
No, I've been doing this for decades, and it's something we've always asked. Hey, why don't we all just keep it forever? That'd be really great.
Yeah,
But no,
it's not like there's not a place for it. You're not running out of
yeah.
shelf space.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Mike. I think this is from memory. I don't keep track of it typically anymore because I've just always accepted what they have. But I think the CALEA, the law enforcement standard, the law was a minimum of 1 year.
Okay.
And so I think that's why Verizon does it that way.
Yes.
But yeah, I'll tell you we have really good relationships with the phone companies, for the most part, and for the most part, they realize that these records can save people's lives. So I use them a lot in abductions. I mean, I've recovered dozens and dozens of young people that have been abducted,
Oh.
kidnapped, missing. I found a missing hiker in the mountains that had been gone for 9 days because of his phone records, right? So these things, when we every year we meet, I don't do this anymore. I gotta stop saying it. We used to meet, I know the FBI still does, and we meet and we share stories of how them getting those records changed somebody's life or preserved somebody's life.
That's so important. Kelly Reed, thank you so much for joining us. We have so many more questions. I will get to your super chats, but what I'm trying to do is ask Mike Easter specific questions right now. So Sheila has a follow-up question. Does Mr. Easter think the FBI will still come for Mr. Higgins eventually? I don't want to put you out. You can shut this off if you want.
I don't mind. I think it'll just be in general. My experience with the FBI and the DOJ, clearly having been there, is that I wouldn't rule out that something's still going to come.
Okay.
Do you think they were watching this second trial, the feds?
100%. Oh, yes. I know they were watching it because my name appeared in the pretrial motions, and I was informed that they were aware that I was going to testify and wanted to know if I was going to testify about anything I knew about the investigation prior to leaving the Bureau.
Oh,
Wow.
that's right. Wow. Really
And
interesting.
I told Alan when he reached out that I couldn't discuss anything that I knew, and that it just had to be a fresh look.
That's great. Fan of the truth, can Mr. Easter's report that he didn't get to testify on be posted or released to the public now? I guess that has to do with whether Karen Reed wants it, that she's basically your client. If she decides to post it, I guess she will give you permission to post it, I would imagine.
Yeah, you are 100% right. It doesn't belong to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't everyone has to understand that it's not his report. He's hired by either an attorney who then has the client's privilege, and the client holds a privilege even on reports, no matter
Right.
That's why we also always like to have actually the attorney pay for the reports and the client reimburse. It's a whole convoluted thing with regard to that, by the way.
And not only the report, but I made the maps for her cell phone records and I did them correctly, unlike Tully did.
Yeah, I'm sure. We have no doubt to talk with you. Romy, thank you for the donation. I was trying to hold the monetary ones, but I do think this is a good thing to post. I'm so angry Judge Kenney would not let him testify. Thank you for interviewing him. And what we're seeing is that people are here because they want to hear what you said, what you were going to say, and all. And with regard to that, DIR question, Mike Easter, is it too late to seek DNA from Bryant, Higgins, and Albert to match blood on the T-shirt that had blood on it? Did they say there were two unknown contributors? Did your report address anything like that, or can you address it at all?
Well, one, it's not too late. Clearly, their DNA still exists in their body. And I think we heard testimony, or did we not? I don't know if we heard testimony on DNA, but the profiles still exist, right? They still have the profiles.
Right. With the two unknown contributors.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to pursue that, they could.
Yeah. I would think so. Rainy day. Tully did get demoted and reassigned. He went from detective lieutenant down to lieutenant after IA investigation related to the group text. That really, the problem is the damage is still done, is the way I see it.
What's interesting is I'm glad that they put that there. Demoted to me is not from detective lieutenant to lieutenant. It's insufficient.
I was going to say, is that a demotion? Is that just a new title?
To me, it would be a reassignment because a detective, he's a lieutenant trooper, right, or a lieutenant. He would have been assigned to the detectives bureau, which gave him the detective assignment. Because you heard Trooper Proctor, and they like to refer to themselves as detective trooper, not just a trooper,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think that's more of an assignment role. I think so. To me, it would be. I think whoever wrote this, I would probably not completely degree demoted, but I guess I think in some sense it would feel like a demotion because to be a detective is an elevated position, and so to get sort of that title stripped from you, I think would feel like a demotion. Probably a dock and pay, I would think, if you're
Mm.
not a detective anymore.
Yeah.
I,
Somebody should be
listen,
tracking that to see if that's rescinded at some point, not too far down the road.
Yeah. Well, virtual jury said Tully lost 6 days leave and transferred. They think that's laughable because we all
Right.
know what would happen if we in our, we all know
Yeah.
what would happen.
Right.
So
They
that's
didn't lose.
that's
Those him and Yuri, they did not lose a single thing. There was nothing. They didn't lose any money. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
the leave thing. These guys have more leave than they'll use in a lifetime.
right.
Right?
Karen
mean,
Harris has been waiting patiently. Question: how do these witnesses that didn't testify in trial too get to hide behind witness intimidation? Are you seeing that the intimidation now is with the jurors, and yet they're saying that the witnesses are saying they're intimidated when they weren't called by the prosecutors? I don't know how any of that affected what you think should have been done in investigating them in your report.
yeah, this is a hard one for me to answer because I don't. My understanding was that the McCabe's, the Alberts, and law enforcement officials said that they were feeling intimidated. Was that the understanding of this question?
Right.
Right.
That
And-
And of course,
right.
now most of them did not testify. So
Right.
intimidated from what?
And maybe I'm going to be insensitive here, but grow up a little bit. You're a law enforcement officer. You're upset that somebody doesn't like you. Yeah, I mean that's every day for in many parts of our life. Uh,
That's not
I don't
insensitive.
know.
I mean, you
Yeah,
had somebody on trial for murder here who 12 people found after all this, not guilty. I mean, in this day and age, that's kind
yeah.
of hard, right?
I mean, I get it. They live in that community, right? And I'm sure, you're not walking down the street anymore and now half the people hate you, maybe even more than half, right? So I think you're dirty and maybe a murderer. So uh, I don't see
Yeah.
how that's intimidation, though. People, maybe I'm not familiar enough with all the things that happened to them to offer a great opinion, but um,
Well, on the
It's
juror, they're now
not.
thinking, on the juror, Mike, let me tell you, on Paula, they're saying somebody is suggesting we call ICE on her and her whole family. Okay, I mean, to me, that's intimidation because of
Yeah.
your
I
juror.
mean,
yeah,
it's after the fact, but that's just flat out intimidation, harassment.
it's absolutely horrible. Why would they call? She had would have. I'm not sure with all the jurors, but I'm pretty sure you have to be a U.S. citizen to be a juror. So
Yeah, she's had a very sassy approach to all of this trolling, which is refreshing. She gives it right back. She challenges them when they
Yeah.
suggest she may not be
Right.
a legal alien. So good for her.
That's true. You know what? Good for them. How brave they must be, knowing what the outcome would be to come forward like that. What I really just when I saw those three people, I saw two. I saw Prado and Jason. I didn't see the foreman. I just read his statements.
Right.
Um, I think that goes to the conviction of their opinion, right? They felt that confident and that brave to come forward and tell people that Brennan and the Commonwealth never proved an accident occurred and the injuries were inconsistent with being hit by a car.
Well,
I actually
Jason,
think, and I think at the end, my watching, I thought Brennan got a little desperate with the charade of that hoodie, and there's no chance. I don't believe there's any reasonable person that can come to a conclusion he did not know that those were already there from the medical or from the lab. I don't believe that for a second. And I just thought when you mischaracterize the evidence that bad, it really, really destroys credibility. And credibility has to be his anchor with the jury, right? He has. I always looked. You know what's funny is I kept referring to him as defense, and it wasn't by accident because I think you two would agree with me is that I felt like the roles were flipped. Karen Reed and her team were trying to bring the witnesses forward, trying to bring the evidence forward, trying to bring it into the light to show the truth, right, to uncover things. And defense kept kind to, oh, no, we need to keep that witness out. We need to keep that evidence out. We need to cover it up. We can't even bring these witnesses in. We can't even have our law enforcement witnesses testify. And ultimately, they sort of, Brennan looked more like a defense of trying to create reasonable doubt in his own case somehow.
Yeah.
And Alan and Yannetti and Alessi, they're like the champions for truth on their side. I've never seen the scales or the roles flip so much in a case.
Jason Sorensen, yes, Mr. Easter did answer that, that the DOJ would never say that an investigation was closed. They just don't say that. So
I've never seen that in my life. And I'm the one that works in those cases. We would have talked about it. What should we tell them? And
really,
typically, yeah. Oh no, there's a meeting. Normally we would say nothing. We used to give a joke. I don't know if this is appropriate, but we used to treat them like mushrooms. Feed them shit and keep them in the dark. That was sort of one of our phrases. I don't know if that's appropriate, but I cannot believe that Brennan, as a special prosecutor who is a defense attorney by trade now, that the DOJ is going to confide in him where they are at. It defies my experience.
Yeah. And I think that was just what they wanted to be out there, whether they created it out of whole cloth or heard a rumbling somewhere. That helped them. They wanted that to be the situation.
Yeah, I think he perpetuated that statement into some pretrial stuff, right? Well, they've closed it. It's like, Alan didn't say that. I don't think Alan got the feeling it was closed.
No.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to share. This is one of the newer jurors. Her name is. I wrote it down here somewhere. Janet Jimenez. She was juror number 12. I've just pushed together 30 seconds of some of the things she told WCVB and give them credit for this. But I think she's very different than the other jurors that have spoken. So,
like it was in the stars that I was going to get picked for this. I was hoping that my fellow jurors could help me to go through all of this. So I went in with a very open mind, but definitely leaning toward that she was guilty.
Do you think he planted evidence or tampered with the investigation?
I can't determine that. I don't want to be like, oh, should I second guess myself? Because I'm very comfortable with how I came to the decision. So I guess it'll be part of my story.
So yeah, I mean, I would put her, not to be mean, in the sheep category. She even said going into deliberation she was leaning toward guilt of some sort. We don't know what. And then listened to everybody and came to a different decision. What's your take on her demeanor, her attitude, is from that little clip?
Yeah, I agree that there are roles that jurors take in the trials. I teach expert testimony. I've taught it for 10 years now, and I think I said last time I've testified well over 200 trials, and you get pretty used to seeing jurors clearly. And I tend to, one of the things I tell people is that you'll see 12, sometimes 18, or I've had multiple jurors in a case, and watch the people that are paying attention to you, right? And compel you need to, I don't want to say teach, but you need to get across your opinions and conclusions to the people that are paying attention to you. Don't try to win everybody over. Win over the people that are paying attention, because when they go back and deliberate, the people that didn't pay attention know that there were people paying attention. It's like, I don't want to say they're cheating, getting the answers from them, but they're like, they said that? Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that. Because not everybody's paying attention 100% of the time, right? I totally get that. I actually think, I think she that is not an uncommon thing. I think even Prado said that she was inclined to think she was guilty, and that's not very uncommon. If the government arrests you and brings the case against you, most people think, well, that person probably did. The defendant probably did it. Why else would they have arrested her? And so I think ultimately the defense's job is really an uphill battle, right? Because you're taking people that already sort of are leaning towards it happened, and you have to take them from there all the way to your side, all the way. It's a huge, and all Brennan had to do was just sort of keep them fed that they're on his side still, and he couldn't even do that clearly. What did she say? I actually liked what she said because it's been my opinion, and I'm sure people will strongly disagree with me. It's really, really hard to. Maybe I just don't want to believe it that they tampered with evidence. It's just maybe my law enforcement years. It's like, God, please tell me this isn't happening. Like, I'd just be so disappointing to me. Um, but like we said, it's like it's just suspicious. It's really
Yeah.
suspicious. But I like that she stuck to her guns, and I don't think. Um,
Yeah, that
you
last
guys watch,
question she answered, it was a little out of context, but it was basically the things you've now learned that you did
right?
not learn during the trial. Does that change how you felt?
Oh, okay.
And she said no. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, and she kind of talked about, do you think they proved tampering with evidence? I don't think. I thought the first trial defense seemed that was bigger theme for them to go after, that the evidence was tampered with and planted. This time, I don't think they really had to do that because they had such a good narrative that there was no accident, there was no accident, there was no accident, or what I think Alan said, no collision,
Collision.
no
No
collision, no
collision.
collision.
Yeah, that
Right?
was a huge, strategic change from the first trial. And it certainly, in retrospect, with the result we see, it looks genius. It paid off. It was the
Right.
right way to go. Don't put in
Right.
the juror's mind some thought that we, the defense, have to prove anything to you. So,
Right.
from a viewer perspective, from a true crime enthusiast perspective, doggone it, it was disappointing because there were some weird
Right.
characters in trial number one that were very entertaining for very wrong reasons.
Yeah.
But they could avoid that and just the facts, ma'am. Just
Yeah.
make it clear to this jury that the investigation was horrible and
Right.
there was no collision.
And if they
Yeah,
heard from you, they would hear how more horrible. And to your point, the jury
man.
even said, Paula Prado said something to your point about how you felt that Hank Brennan was acting more like a defense attorney, right? She
Yeah.
said that it became she wasn't going to castigate on personalities, but that the constant objections by the prosecution, especially during Dr. Maurice Russell's testimony, was not good. That they
Right.
wanted to hear what witnesses had to say. They're the fact finder, and they
Right.
felt that he was preventing them from hearing that. And I went ballistic about when the shirt happened.
Yeah.
Let's assume he had a mistake. Well, Lally
Yeah.
and McLaughlin are sitting in that courtroom having tried the
Right.
first case. They didn't get up and correct it either. So I went ballistic.
Yeah,
On
that's
that.
guilt by association. One or all of them should have been fixing that, and they didn't. They waited until they got caught.
Yeah. That was really a disappointing moment for me. I can sort of accept the role that Brennan had to play. They didn't hire the guy that's going to come in there and play by the rules. I think necessarily. I think he was designed to be a bulldog and try to go after somebody to combat the skill of Alan and Eddie and Alessi. They needed somebody that was very aggressive. I don't think Lawley necessarily was that kind of aggression that we saw in first trial that Brennan had in second trial.
No.
But ultimately, I just. That was really it was too much for me. You know what else was too much for me, and it happened before that, is when he said, "You who over here, Brennan." He said that a couple times to witnesses,
I
and I
know.
just thought it was so unprofessional. I talked about Alan. Even when Alan cross-examined me, and those moments were difficult, he was always professional to me, and I respect that. I would have lost I would have had no respect for him after that. And he lost my respect. I understand he has a role to play, but that I can't imagine that resonated very well with the jury, especially.
And I sensed that attitude got worse as their case continued to kind of fall apart.
Plummet?
Right?
Yeah.
Plummet from
Yeah.
the sky?
What's that?
I looked at it as desperate. It became desperate. Like he's like,
attacking people's memory.
Right.
Man.
Dr. Russell.
You don't like that question? I mean, just.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Andrea Burkhart, welcome to our chat, Andrea. Your coverage has been great too. 100%. Yeah. I mean, you have a duty to correct Brennan, and they didn't correct him a number of times. And I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I gave them the benefit of the doubt when they said Alan Jackson didn't produce the ARCA records on the billing to them. I gave them the benefit of the doubt initially when Brennan said that Yannetti had spoken in violation of the gag order. I could not give them the benefit of the doubt, not the way that case was being tried when they got to that shirt. They had to know, especially since they had Hartnett on the rebuttal that she was going to testify that shirt. Those holes have been created.
And the staging of it. Linda, You don't stage evidence behind a witness and prepare it without having gone over the reports and the collection of that evidence. He would have. I I can't think of a reasonable reason that he did not know that those were already were there as a result of the lab. Um, if it is, then he is not as good an attorney as we all thought he was, because he didn't review the evidence correctly. I mean, everybody almost all of us do. I'm like, wait a second, uh, that's insane.
Yeah, and he
How's he
never
getting away
showed it.
with this?
He didn't show it to opposing counsel either, just before
Yeah,
using it. So he's either amazingly arrogant or amazingly stupid.
I
Or I
think it
thought
was desperate.
or I thought the jury was amazingly stupid too. You know?
Yeah, it's insulting. You know what's funny is people say I've heard people call him stupid. I actually don't think Brennan's, and
Oh
I know you don't
no,
mean
no,
that.
no,
I
no,
don't. I
no.
know you don't mean that either, Michael. But
No, I don't
he's
mean
definitely
like
not
low
stupid. He's
IQ. I just mean
Yeah,
to think he could get away with it.
right. I thought it was. Brennan's a smart man. Because
Mhm.
I deal so much with attorneys, I get used to styles, and I can tell when somebody's outside their over their skis. Brennan is a smart person. I believe he knew that evidence backwards and forwards. I don't know that guy's had more than probably 2 hours of sleep a night. So he knew the evidence. He did it purposefully, and I felt like he did it because he was desperate, and he needed something. I think he realized by then that he did not prove the first element. No way. There's no way he was getting second degree murder. And
No.
I knew I truly believe he already knew at that point that manslaughter was hanging by a thread. And so yeah. And that to me was, if I was a juror sitting there, I would have been like, he's purposely lying to me now. I don't like to be lied to. I'm fine if you advocate aggressively, but if I'm sitting there and now you're lying to me, now you're assuming that I'm an idiot. I don't
Mhm.
appreciate it.
Okay, which is
Yeah.
worse? Trial one, Lally Buchanan's inverted video lie,
Mhm.
or the sweatshirt lie in trial two?
God, can they both be
We
horrible? Uh,
we actually
uh,
actually
I would
wow.
say I thought the impact. I'm not. You know what? It's a really good one. I think from retrospect, the impact of that video being uncovered in real time on Cross was so powerful, because I actually don't think Yuri and them really knew. I think they were like, oh crap, is he right? Because what I mean, if they knew and did that, that's even worse. I mean, it's horrific to then think that they knew it was inverted. I just think they were like, it goes to their whole thing. I just don't think they were
Not very good.
competent. I don't think they conducted a complete and thorough investigation. I think they were just inexperienced in that way. But then I think ultimately I would go with the sweater, because that was a lie to the jury, right to their face. He held it up, and he did it very thematically, and he walked it down the jury, and he used it to impeach a witness. And I thought it was so unprofessional that it's unforgivable.
Yeah, yeah, I did
And
too.
can I ask, is Andrea Burkhardt? She has a YouTube channel, I think.
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
yes, and
yeah.
she's been covering
Mhm.
this very,
Yeah,
very
because I
strongly in
thought
support of.
my wife, and I'll admit too, I watched The Lawyer You Know, and I think she was on that this morning. I've watched a lot of his recaps. He does a really nice job of
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
recaps.
there's been some great. Yeah, we're a young YouTuber channel comparatively. We only recently just started and have got into this, but they're great show. I mean, just great shows on Karen Reed. And Mike, I think you're going to be in well demand both for cases and for being on YouTube channels. Selective memory failures. Let me go some of these questions now who've been waiting, because we don't like to do the super chats if we can avoid them. But some of these
Mhm.
people have been with us for this whole trial. Please ask Mr. Easter if he thinks that the DOJ, FBI have all the phone records, because we still don't know what
Mhm.
they are investigating. Okay. Do you think that they've gotten them, or they're getting them? Just a guess, wild guess.
I don't. Well, I'm in a position that I wouldn't have to guess.
Okay, we can't go there
Uh,
then. We can't go there then, because I'm going to ask you at the
um,
very end, and Michael and I are going
yeah.
to ask you. You know, our,
I
our,
would
our
say,
role agrees.
can I, maybe I
Yeah.
give perspective. Is the Bureau, this is not me speaking on behalf of the Bureau. From my experience, the Bureau doesn't investigate these types of crimes, right? There's no federal statute for homicide, right? That's a state
Right.
crime.
Right.
So the Bureau wouldn't have come in to investigate the homicide. We don't have a mechanism for it. Instead, remember what the Bureau is in charge of investigating. One of the number one, the top priorities of the FBI are counterterrorism, counterintelligence, public corruption. And so you can ask yourself, where is public corruption exist? And the Bureau's probably looking into it.
And that's Sandra Birchmore. They did indict Matthew Farwell for homicide of murder of a federal witness in an investigation, but it's not a plain homicide statute. And I tell people that all the time.
I think your audience should remember the Bureau's not trying to prove who committed the crime. They're determining whether or not the person that was supposed to be doing that is doing it ethically.
Yeah. Andrew Burkhardt then said, by the way, since you come out, they think we're stupid. I think they do think they're stupid. They should. But actually, they actually think we're smart. That's why Judge Kenney wouldn't allow Mike Easter to testify when he was first on last week. He said that this was incomplete. This investigation was. You gave me the other two I's, which I repeated like 100 times.
Inaccurate, incomplete, and inconsistent.
Inconsistent.
Well, and remember, this is when the jury was deliberating, and then they come out after the fact and basically reinforce everything you told us.
Well, and I think that's a testament to the jurors. I think they really did a great job listening. They must have been attentive and just engaged the whole time, because what I saw in my review of the evidence isn't what Brennan saw, which is that she was the sole suspect and a collision occurred and that it was done ethically and accurately and completely. Instead, I saw the evidence the way the jury saw it. And when they said those things, I was like, yeah, that's exactly how I saw it as well. And that's why I picked up on my next three for you today was privileged, right? Prejudiced and premature.
Privileged, and premature, right.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Because jurors remember three. We learned that from jury.
The rule of threes.
The rule of three. So listen, now we've gone through some questions and we got 26 more. Okay. Jose.
Yeah, well, let me ask, Michael, are you okay for a little bit more? You okay?
Yeah, I don't know how long the charge of my headphones last, but we'll go until that happens, I guess.
Okay.
Whiff and Hyde confirmed. By the way, if you have AirPods, you can put one back into the box and just work with one.
Okay, I'll start alternating. I'll start conserving.
Okay. All right, and then that charge is put the other. We learned that as we were doing 6-hour shifts on Law and Crime. You can always, and we were during the pandemic, so you can work with one if you can hear in one ear.
Okay.
And then charge the other.
But don't be frightened by that prospect. We won't keep you that long.
Yeah, okay. Whiff and Hyde confirmed OJO's cell phone was probably in a Faraday bag. Cell phone battery temp ranged 72 to 77 degrees from 12:37 a.m. to 6:04. 432 steps taken during that period. Who typically has access to Faraday bags? By the way, just so you know, I have a Faraday bag right here. I put my car key in it so that my car, and I fold it up at night so that no one coming past can steal my car. Of course, if they did, the battery would have died on it because it's now been towed
would have taught them a lesson.
Yeah. taught them a lesson, by the way.
I have a Faraday bag that I probably should use and don't, but tell folks what that is and why it's important.
Yeah, it's basically a signal blocker, right? It would be the same idea of putting it in airplane mode or keeping it away from the ability for somebody to do a remote wipe of the device. And really, you don't want things to start interacting with the device that then can change its data set. And so the goal is to preserve it as it was found. I mean, I'd be surprised somebody had a Faraday bag. They didn't even have evidence collection bags. I mean, why do they got Faraday bags? But yeah, I mean, anybody can go purchase these things. But typically it'd be a law enforcement thing or a lab tech, somebody that would show up with those things. So
interesting question though. Arlene Wiley said, member for 2 months. The McAlbert's threatening, not the other way. We agree with you there.
I agree.
We all think you, Michael, and I all agree, and Arlene agrees. Oh, by Disney Nerd, member for 4 months, the best host, guest, and chat on the tube. Thanks for hanging with us. Thank you for your information, Mr. Easter. That's just to give you an appreciation. And another Mr. Easter, or another Mr. Easter, we appreciate you, Joanne Jetaplatopus. Again, I mean, my gosh, a love from the Goodmans. You are getting, Mike Easter, the appreciation that Hank Brennan would not have given you at all here.
I don't think Hank would have been professional in his cross-examination of me for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, he wouldn't have been professional. We're promoting we don't care about promoting other shows. Larissa Harris don't want to promote other creator, but Loophole Lawyer did a few videos on him tying his misstatements, lies, etc. Also, the trial one, he does not admit or dances around the Sally Port question and Devers false memory. I think they're talking about Kenney and then Devers. We talked about Devers last time we were here a little bit, just a little bit, you know.
I just
go ahead, Devers.
Dever.
Dever. I'm sorry. Never say Devers.
Never say Dever.
What a gift to the Commonwealth. You know, I realize they called her, but it was another opportunity to put a law enforcement witness in front of the jury that had no credibility and had a false memory, right? And then I really thought Alan did a good job. He didn't oversell it. As how many times have you met with the chief of Boston Police Department? 0. But you met with him before coming here. Yes.
Yep.
And what did he
Doesn't
say?
everybody?
We support you. You know, do your best or whatever he said. There was like, oh God, he did. You know, good defense attorneys. The whole question, Claire. You know this is what they want in front of the jury, and the whole way he sold that question. It was like we already know what he wants out of that. It was obvious, and
Tell
she
her to do
she
the right
played
thing.
into it. Do the right thing.
Stole my
You know,
line.
what's funny is her and Yuri. I read the Colonel Noble. You guys, did you read his statement?
Yes.
That he put out?
Yeah,
I thought it was
really
interesting. He hit on my key things. I don't think he read my report, but I thought it was interesting that the things that I saw, the jury saw, and the things that I saw and even made note of is specifically some of the titles he has in his report and his statement. And one was Advanced Investigative Techniques. It's a course that I've taught for the Bureau for a long time, is Advanced Investigative Techniques. And I put in there that some things about advanced investigative techniques that they did not use and should have used, and things that they did use and used it inappropriate or
okay. So what are those?
improperly.
What are those? Again, I'm sorry, everybody, with all the super chats. You're going to have to wait because I think this is more important. We find out what Mike Easter.
Oh man, I'm fine answering questions. I don't have to go through all these things if the questions are more important to you.
No. What's more important to listen to?
This might be on. This might be on the final. So please tell us.
So what were the 3 things that you put in the report, that they should have done?
Well, I would say he said advanced investigative techniques, and I'll give you a couple of them. Maybe I'll address just Higgins. I would have got Higgins' iCloud account, right? If he destroyed his iPhone, did he destroy his iCloud? If not, then he paired it back up to a new device, right? But even then, I would still get access to his iCloud account to see if that device disconnected from his iCloud account, right? I would have got his cell phone records for his personal phone and his work phone, as well as GPS information from the ATF and DOJ related to it, and I would have compelled them through a legal process. I would have examined his vehicle, especially I think he had a snowplow in his car, right? I would have examined that thing. I thought it was highly maybe this is an advanced investigative technique, but your viewers may not know this, but he and the 2 minors were the only 3 people who were given the courtesy of having their initials on the report and not their full name. The reason you put it, okay, well so Brian Higgins' report and his name reference in the file was B.H. And the reason we do that is to hide their name from a search in the database. We would normally do that for informants as well.
That's what I was going to say. Is that a law enforcement courtesy or
yes,
what?
It was. I put that in my report that he was extended a law enforcement courtesy of giving his initials so that he would not appear in a law enforcement database search.
Wow, that's a new one. Okay,
it goes back to the first P, privilege. He was given privilege. Right?
Wow.
I would have got his logs from his access of Canton PD, and I would have done it for at least 30 days to determine a pattern of it. Does he come in regularly after Friday nights of drinking to do administrative functions? I found that to be completely a red flag. After a night of drinking, your first thought is to drive your car drunk to the Canton Police Department and do work.
Yeah, and move cars while drunk.
Yeah, which he never did. He never did.
It's so hard to tell. Somebody said it looks like he drove one car. The video is far from perfect, but it doesn't look like he's valeting any cars around.
I would have done, so the Bureau has a really great team, and we used it a lot in January 5th and January 6th. And it's a group called Divert, DIVRT. It's digital imagery and video recovery team. And they do an amazing job of collecting digital and imagery evidence from, we basically cast a net. And I mean, we're getting things from vehicles that have vehicle cameras like Teslas, any type of static camera, anything that's recording imagery, and they take all this imagery like straight out of the movies. I mean, I was so impressed, and they convert it and normalize the times. We talk about time conversions, normalize the times, and they stitch together this huge imagery, this analysis of streets, roadways, not just along surface levels, but in depth. And it is an amazing, so we can then watch it spatially. Well, where did they walk?
Oh, wow.
And we go to the next cameras. And, oh, they walked over to the right. And where did they walk after right? Oh, they walked over to this building. Oh, they went into this building. They got into this car. It is phenomenal.
Wow.
I don't expect that Canton PD or Massachusetts State PD have a similar divert program.
They didn't even have evidence collection bags.
Michael, they got to start a little smaller, like evidence collection
Maybe
bags,
they could just start
know?
with their own personal camera of taking a picture of a piece of evidence when they found it. That'd be great. Maybe take a picture of the vehicle when you go to seize it for inventory. But
Maybe.
so, but I think that is an advanced investigative technique. But that technique can exist. LAPD, I've worked with them on a quadruple homicide. They didn't use divert, but they used good old investigative know-how, and they drove the likely routes away from the homicide, and they looked for video cameras, got out and they do a neighborhood canvas, and they go through. Hey, do you have a camera that faces this street? Yes, we need it. And you didn't even see anybody try that here. Why not get cameras? Not, let's just say 34 Fairview, even though the one Canton police officer apparently had one and nobody bothered to get it, right? I think Lieutenant Gallagher said, well, why would I do that? I know it doesn't face anywhere. It's like,
Right.
it's
Other
just like,
deputy police chief. Who's
I
looking
mean,
for?
why wouldn't he just have volunteered it? Here it is. But I would have done it like we talked about, I think on the last one, is I would have looked, what are the likely routes away and to this location? Let's go retrace them. We're going to look for stuff, and we're going to stitch together what happened across time. And that really is really, really helpful for a timeline. So that would have been another investigative technique. Power dumps, we talked about. Area search, we talked about. The geofence they did, but was came back negative. I personally, these are two things that I think most people wouldn't have thought about. And if they did, they all should get a brownie point if you guys hand those out. Is I would, and this is something LAPD does a great job at, is Wi-Fi router downloads.
Speaking about that, okay. What are Mr. East's thought on the Wi-Fi connection record at 1236 while Reed's phone still seems to be connected to the cell tower with ENBID 57286 on the other side of Canton at that time?
This person's very good.
I interrupted you only because I knew that you'd like this question.
So let's dissect a couple things for your jurors here. Clearly, I hope everybody knows what a Wi-Fi connection, and we would have a Wi-Fi router, a wireless router that projects that access point. So, an access point. Think of Wi-Fi as an access point. Your phone, when connected to that Wi-Fi, is transmitting its MAC address, right? It's media access, right? So a MAC address is unique, and it's unique to the device. So we could have seen devices that connected to the Wi-Fi router. I've used this pretty successfully in child pornography cases where we're trying to see who used that Wi-Fi access point to download child porn. Okay.
Whoa.
In addition to Wi-Fi, people in my world, we can then, we have equipment. We could have measured that Wi-Fi router's broadcast signal to determine how far someone could be and still connect to it for service, right? So think of a blob we would show around that Wi-Fi router to say, well, if they haven't made it to this blob yet, they couldn't have connected to it, right? That would have been really powerful for this case, which could still be done if they had the exact same Wi-Fi router and plugged it into the exact same place. They still could go survey it. I doubt they'll do that.
Wow.
But
Wow.
So Wi-Fi connection. Now you're getting me all excited. These are
No, by the way, this is Shining Shogun who asked this question.
This person shows a lot of sophistication. So whoever they are, congratulations on your question, and I appreciate it. So I want to dissect it. So E and B that's evolved node B, or it's a 4G cell site. Okay, that may be the
Okay.
simplest way to look at it. That's how Verizon would identify it. It would have been in the Verizon records, and that 57286. I'm going to stall here for a sec while I open up something. So in this case, I mapped her Verizon phone records, and I mapped them to show where I believe her cell site activity was consistent with. And in doing that, my opinion that the cell site activity was inconsistent with residents of One Meadows at 1236. Okay. It would be my opinion that she was still using cell sites up until about 1235, maybe 1236, consistent with the area of Fairview. And she was actually calling John O'Keefe. And which would make sense if he had gone inside. She's calling him. Where, in fact, she said in one of those recorded ones in the that we heard, John, where the fuck are you? Right. That was using a cell site in the area of Fairview, which would be consistent with, where are you? Why aren't you coming back out? You're leaving me out here. I thought you were going to go check on this thing, right? That was sort of her story, right? He went inside and I was waiting for him. She got annoyed and left. When she gets annoyed and leaves, I don't think it's possible for her to now, assuming that time's an accurate reflection, because again, Michael, me and you both agree that time came from Celebrite. So we already had our discussion.
We have our concerns.
Right. So I would say that that would have given me suspect. What I would have done is I would have downloaded her Wi-Fi router at One Meadows and determined when the MAC address connected back to it. But we don't necessarily, I would have done that, but we already, can you hear me okay? Because I know my headset went out.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we got you.
Is that I would have then, looking at her cell phone records, we know that call because they played it. And you can hear her car when she's on hook. You hear her car beeping. Right?
Yep.
You hear it get turned off and you hear the car door open.
Yep.
Well, they actually took the time of that event from the Sidebahhh extraction. The real time of that event actually is in the cell phone records. I know when the call was initiated and I know how long it lasted and I know what it ended. And that call took place off a tower that's consistent with One Meadows. So she initiated the call when she was at home.
So what's the timestamp on that for you?
Wow.
I think it was 12:39 and some change.
So 3 minutes later than the accepted 12:36.
Right, and the reason I say the 12:36 doesn't seem reasonable to me is because she's just pulling in. Right when we hear that call, and it's almost, I think it's like 3-4 minutes prior, and give me some leeway here as approximations, but how would she have connected to Wi-Fi 3 to 4 minutes earlier when she's using towers still up near One Fairview, and then her cell site doesn't change to the area of One Meadows until about that time she makes that call, and we see the her polling or hear her polling. We don't see it pulling in. I think the 1236 is suspect to me, and if it was that big of an importance to the investigation, I would have consulted Brennan and the prosecutors or the defense or the detectives. Let's test the Wi-Fi router and see how far away you can be and still connect to it.
Because obviously the 1236 helped the defense. They relied on it. They pounded on it. If there were that 3.5 minute difference, it helps the prosecution.
Not
right.
Really.
I ultimately think.
I know you think it does, but I also see some issues because she was calling him, right? She's calling him, where are you? Where are you? Where are you?
Right.
Indicating that she hasn't backed into him if he's not answering her phone. Because
no, I don't disagree with any of that.
Okay.
I'm just talking about the travel time, having traveled that route a couple of times.
Yeah, it's about
myself
7 minutes. I don't see how she's using cell sites in the area, and I have it up now. She's using cell sites in the area of John O'Keefe or 34 Fairview for outgoing calls to John O'Keefe starting at 12:33, 12:34, 12:35, and ultimately around 12:36. And then I think she transitioned south around 12:37, 12:38, 12:39 into the area, traveling into the area of One Meadows. And so, yeah, my opinion would have been that the 12:36 would. I don't believe that's an accurate reflection of her location information at that time. And ultimately, you guys, I think I mentioned it, we would download the Wi-Fi router at One Meadows, so we would have known what time she connected.
Right.
They had her MAC address. It was in her Sidebahhh extraction.
And they didn't do that. They didn't do that. Sandra Burkhardt says, great interview. Love the insights into the investigation privilege. And she has a follow-up question. Andrew says, how did they not search the entire route every time she drove between Waterfall and Dighton? So I guess it has to do with everything. How did they not just search her entire routes the whole night, Mike?
It's a question that defies logic. If she's my primary suspect, I'm going to look for her vehicle along the entire route. They did have her with the temple and the library around, I think it was like 5:10, 5:18, somewhere around that time. I actually have it in my maps. Let's see. But yeah, so they did have that, but I was going to say these guys are just lazy.
Well, they didn't do or as you pointed out, they decided upon her initially, and they didn't care about what the information showed.
Some of it could be a resource thing. I don't feel like they had a lot of people coming in to work this thing. I've worked I talked about this last time. The amount of people that come in to work this is you're trying to find things for them to do. You're sending 2 or 3 people that, hey, all 3 of you go look for video cameras at this street, and it's so. I responded to the RNC DNC pipe bomb and the January 6th events because of my role.
Wow.
And the amount of people that we had there, and rightfully so, is a big case for the country. However you fall politically on these things, it was a big case. So I guess my point to that is the amount of people that should have been working this to cover it's legwork. It's busy work, but it has to be done. Andre, I can't answer your question of why it wasn't done. It is absolutely a critical flaw, and it's not even an advanced investigative technique. It is a basic investigative technique in this day and age to look for CCTV. Cameras are everywhere.
Yeah. And as I know from talking to the neighbor 2 doors down, nobody even knocked on his door. So, I mean,
the fact that a neighborhood canvas was not done. Because the reality is that makes the assumption that you see everybody's cameras. I've worked a couple really, I shouldn't say good homicides. That's horrible. I've worked some homicides where people had security cameras that were covert, and because they lived in a neighborhood that was very clearly a homicide occurred in front of their house. And they had covert security cameras, and you wouldn't have known unless you asked because they weren't readily visible from the street.
Oh, wow. That's interesting too.
How many? What if somebody has something like that?
Everyone is loving you, Michael. Older Amber, just 5 months. Thank you, Mr. I don't understand how they didn't either. You know, my husband always says that good police work. Always people forget. Everyone thinks just go to the labs. You have a lot of leg work, and you have a lot of old time gumshoe work, right? You have a lot of things to do. That's hard work. It's just not going to come to you. You have to go to it. And if you're not doing it on the little case, the regular case, I don't mean little, but the regular case, everyday work, you're not going to do it on the big one, especially when you decided that you've gotten your person.
And I guess maybe I have higher expectations. I don't want to say LAPD is perfect because I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that say they're not, but I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing detectives at LAPD, from South Bureau Homicide to Robbery Homicide, their RHD, their big divisions. And watching these detectives take apart a case is just so impressive. And that's what I took as the measurement for the litmus test of what should be done and could be done. And when I didn't see any of these things, I'm just like, well, I guess is this something that happens only on the West Coast? But no, I've worked with some really great law enforcement from New York. I did a really great case with some troopers in Somerville, and I can tell you that I think what would be great for your audience to know is that this isn't how law enforcement's done across the country.
It's not how law enforcement's done. Right.
No. These people, these individuals, these investigators are not a reflection of the type of work that is done across the country, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, that's hope.
Yeah. Can I ask, or maybe go? I know you have a lot of questions. I thought I'd add 2 more things. I thought that Colonel Noble put that was really good. He put courtroom testimony. So he saw what I saw, which is they need a lot of training in courtroom demeanor. They were poor witnesses. They needed to be refreshed their recollection far too often, whether they were doing that deliberately to delay or to sort of be, it just became across as evasive. You should know the case. You should know the things. Yuri, battling back and forth with Alan over things he should have known from his report is not a good look, I think. He put case management, which I had a whole section in my report about case management. They had no proper case management system.
Wow.
And that's critical. It's critical for a cold case, Mike. When you talked about, I think a little bit, is that if you don't have good case management, when the cold case comes in, you try to go back to the detectives. Hey, where did you keep this? I mean, we have a good example in this case. Michael Proctor kept a video in some folder on his computer, right? That no one else had access to, right? That shouldn't be happening. And then the other one I noted was reporting, proper reporting. So that I took that to mean you should have a chain of custody. You should have reported your events at or near the times that you did them. I mean, I'll give you one of my, Alan used some of my stuff, so I appreciate Alan. I appreciate that at least I was somewhat valuable. Is those list of dates of reports and when they were actually, or investigative time and date of report. And he's like, would it be surprise you that 100 of or X number were 100 days late? These many numbers were 50 days. This one was 500. I would give you an example. Trooper Paul did the cars analysis on February 1st, the initial one. He didn't write his report. I wrote it down because it's just so unbelievable to me. Where'd I put it down here? He wrote his report. So February 1st, couple days after January 29th in 2022. He didn't write it until May 22nd of 2023.
Unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and he a year and a half, almost a year and a half later, it takes you to write that report. Well, they arrested her that same day. I guarantee it, based on the things he saw in that analysis. So how are you writing an affidavit for an arrest warrant? And then I thought the other one that was really telling, and I had it up, I think your audience would like this, would be this one, you'll be surprised to learn that Trooper Tully approved this report, is that Trooper Proctor finally recounted all the days that they recovered evidence from 34 Fairview. And I won't go through all the days, but it's a handful of days. He finally wrote that report of the days and who collected it on November 4th, 2023.
Yeah.
Michael Bryant
almost
is
2 years later. Yeah, that's
big on this.
2/3, 2/8, 2/10, 2/11, 2/18.
Yeah, I wrote them down too. Yeah.
Which apparently you guys can cite it, but if we'd asked Yuri Buchanan to cite that, he wouldn't know. Yeah. So somebody wants to know, and this is a good question, common sense investigator. Do we know if Higgins went back to 34 Fairview after Canton PD?
We don't, and you know why?
No cell phone records.
Didn't get his cell phone records. If you got his cell phone records, and we would have been able to determine most likely when he left, because he would have had Verizon RTT, when he arrived at Canton PD, which we have some surveillance video, we would have known who he was calling, who he was texting with. If we got his iCloud account, we would have seen his iMessages. I mean, he's one of those ones, man. I wish I would have loved to have dug my fingers into his records and put a map together for some people.
Yeah. Now, I don't know. Lucia, I'm not sure about this question. I don't quite understand it. Little Michael.
I understand it.
Okay, you understand it. Okay. A friend at FBI can't swipe his phone or ask him how is Michael aware. Can you ask? Okay, you understand. Right. So tell us what it is.
I understand the question. Okay. So the FBI has what we refer to as RCFL, Regional Computer Forensic Laboratories, and they're pre-positioned throughout the country, and they actually have a really great service. They not only assist FBI agents and other local, state, and federal law enforcement, but they are the place that would do a Cellebrite extraction or a forensic extraction of the mobile device, right?
Using Cellebrite itself? Using Cellebrite?
Yeah, we use that tool. We have, I won't go through all of our tools because that's not necessarily something I should share with you, but Cellebrite is one. That's pretty obvious. But we have a kiosk, and you basically go to this kiosk and you can be assisted by a lab tech to download information. Well, Higgins used his privilege, right? Let's stay with my privilege term. Okay. He used his privilege to go to a supervisory special agent at the RCFL to aid in his extraction of his mobile device for things that he wanted to provide the government or the
Okay. Good
Commonwealth.
question. Good
This
question,
is
Richard.
highly improper. It's a misuse of government property. Although I don't know for certain, I would imagine the FBI agent that did that was reprimanded and got maybe he got more than 3 days off of his leave, but I don't think he would have been fired for it. But definitely outside the scope of his employment. You have to have a legal reason to download somebody's phone into the FBI. You can't just go around downloading things for your buddies, even if
It's
they are
not.
law enforcement.
It's not.
And the reality is, isn't it suspicious that he had to go to a third party? Let's just say a third party's the FBI to download it. When doesn't Massachusetts State Police have somebody that does that? In fact, I thought his Trooper G or something. Somebody in your chat will know his name, but he did
Yeah.
all the Celebrite extractions for them. The Trooper
Guarino.
Why
Yeah,
couldn't-
but everyone knew that he missed them. He's the one who missed the 32,000 text messages between Farwell and the Sandra Birchmore case and Sandra Birchmore. So
a lot
I
can
don't
be
think,
missed in Celebrite based on the nature of the operating system that you had of your Celebrite. They send updates all the time. You heard it in the testimony. Well, we fixed it after this trial, and now we updated the software. And so some of that, I did a case where they're like, Mike, we didn't get this location information in the download, and I was like, it was a couple years. I said it's been a couple years. They fixed those things. Go back and re-download the phone. The phone's still in evidence. They're like, yeah, go download it again. And guess what? It's there.
Interesting.
that's really interesting. Okay, let me see
Classy
a couple
Clippy.
of
Did we
these.
do this one? No, you didn't do that one.
No, this is another one. You want to read it, Michael?
Yeah. Could cell phone data such as the troopers be pulled into the Turtle Boy, Aiden Carney case?
I don't
You
see
know
why it
anything
couldn't be.
about that? Yes.
I guess if somebody was looking for it, right?
Anybody using a cell phone that isn't connected solely to Wi-Fi is going to have cell site data. And signaling. Signaling data is very passive. It's a necessary component of the LTE and the 5G networks to maintain synchronization of the mobile device. So yeah.
I just want to tell you, as we go through the 23 questions, I was taking a quick picture of 2B here. He is like so interested in this. I don't know if you all can see it. He is like flat on his back.
He's passed out.
Just passed out over here. I was taking a servant to.
You got to get him some dog headphones.
Yeah, the dog have in privacy. Meatball Morrissey Sketty Stain. I mean, well, Sketty Stain. Okay. What about on the inverted Sallyport video? They put white over the opposite taillight. All the videos are altered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we didn't necessarily see that in the second trial as we saw it in the first. I thought because obviously the Commonwealth would have fixed the inversion, but it just goes to the sloppiness of it, right? I mean, I think that's just these investigators, Yuri, Proctor, Tully, they just didn't seem as much as I know this is going to be painful for them to hear if they watch your show, but I don't find them to be very sophisticated in their experience.
I think that's the nicest thing you could say.
Here's somebody who wants to know something else. Okay, Serenity RPH. Michael Proctor hid the Sallyport videos. Taillight was completely damaged by someone. Proctor, so many more examples. Not bad investigation explains everything that happened here. Do you agree, Mr. Easter?
I agree. And that goes back to, I think I used that as the example of poor case management, right? You don't evidence goes in certain places and it's not in your personal drop folder on your computer, right? I mean, you may have a working copy. Clearly, I have stuff like that. You don't always want to go to the original copies for things. You have working copies. That to me was just to be fair to your listener. Yeah, that's bad investigation, but it's highly suspicious.
Highly suspicious. All right, someone wants to know if you have an opinion, and I'm not sure if I can get it because things are coming so fast. By the time I hit the question, there's another one. Do you know or have an opinion on if Jen McCabe made the 227 Google search, or were you asked to even look at that?
I wasn't asked to look at that because someone else did, but I do have opinions about it if you'd like to hear some of them.
Oh, sure. Of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's from Hanky Salyer, by the way.
This may not. Maybe the one guy that asked the question about Wi-Fi and the E&B will know what I'm about to say because he seemed pretty savvy. I doubt this is very common knowledge, and I'm not sure. I'll share it anyway because you probably could Google it. Is that you can do a Google keyword search term, and you can send a legal process to Google and ask them to query for anybody that made this search term. It can be a single word or a term, and I would have given them a very clear window very immediately. I want to know who typed "Haas long to die in the cold" on January 29th and what device did it.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
There can't be that
wow.
many. There cannot be that many. Not with that typo.
No, because now they would have said no if you said how long to die in the cold, but because of the spelling errors, and then I would have asked, I want to know when and then I would have asked for a follow up, and I would have determined that there was only one device that made both searches.
Holy mackerel!
And it would have the time on it.
Yeah,
and that seems so that seems so easy.
This goes down to advanced investigative techniques. The fact that they don't know these things is baffling to me. It's alarming. I mean, they seem to tout themselves. I'm not super familiar with Massachusetts State Police, but I feel like they seem like they're the big dog on the East Coast for the state of Massachusetts, right? I mean, they would be a pretty big agency. The fact that they don't know these things is alarming.
It's very alarming. Miss Reed, you're all set. Does Mr. Easter think that there's any way they will be able to get justice for John?
No, because I don't think they'll ever try.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I think we could, all three of us in your audience can be honest. If they were to reopen the investigation, then they would be admitting that they were wrong.
Yeah. And they're not going to do that because
they're unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
I think that the optics of that are just they would.
Well, and it's also just not in their nature. You can just tell. Look at the interviews done after the fact. I mean, the verdict not even dry on the form, and they're already defending their position. So.
Right. Why couldn't they have made the statement that what they did, in terms of what Brennan's statement made, but maybe also something that's a little more like, we're going to review our investigative strategy and determine if we missed anything, and we're going to go back over it with a fine-tuned comb and think of some things we could do to determine whether or not there's additional evidence that we should have collected and maybe identified another suspect,
just like the NTSB does when there's a plane crash, right? They come in and see what it is that the pilot could have done wrong or what it is that we could do right in the future. I mean, there's no way to even to get that kind of review, and this kind of like follows up on that. Would Mr. East ever be an expert for Hank in the future? Let me answer that. I think if Hank Brennan came and said, look, we really want the truth and we want all of your truth, the truthful opinions, and we went on a joint to hire jointly with the defense, would you do something like that as opposed to would you be willing to do something like that? I mean, I'm putting in a different frame than if he called you up tomorrow on Hank Whitey Bulger too, to be his expert.
Honestly, I wouldn't do it. I'd like to think that I'm, the evidence is the evidence, and I tend to lean that way almost in every case. It is what it is. Let me look at it, and I'll give you an honest opinion, and I'll tell you whether or not I'd be a valuable witness for you, or maybe you should look somewhere else. I just found. I think it'd go back to why I chose to help Alan, even though he cross-examined me aggressively, is that I found him to be a professional, and he didn't try to trick me. He didn't try to lie to me. He didn't try to mislead me. He asked hard questions that he should ask on behalf of his client. I don't think I would assist Brennan because I was just disappointed in his lack of professionalism at the end of the trial, and I just thought that. If he's willing to do that in front of the world that was watching and in front of the jury, I suspect he would ask me to mischaracterize something too, and I just couldn't do that.
And that to our viewers, I think that's a real telling answer about what a great witness Mike Easter would have been. I have one more specific question here, Mr. Easter. Thoughts on, and I don't know this, okay?
I don't know this either.
Okay, so Madeira Beach caregiver, we can't give you this. Ms. Sean McGonigal, FBI CI interviews on Gavin Fisher's YouTube. So I don't think we know that, Madeira Beach. I'm sorry, we can't answer that question. I know you're such a big supporter of the network, but none of us know that, okay? And we're not, we just couldn't go there. By the way, here's your website and all. I can say nothing more except we're going to let Mike Easter go unless you have very specific questions. He's been here with us for over 2 hours. I know we want to pick his brain even more, and then when he leaves, we'll go through all the other super chats and all. Except for this one, okay? I'm going to let you go on this one because everyone wants to know, is anything more coming? Would the DOJ lie and tell someone the investigation was over when it's not? That's crime scene investigation.
No, I've not found the DOJ to misrepresent things, something like that so important. That's not in their nature. They're if they didn't want to tell you, and they wouldn't. If they didn't want you to know the right thing, they would just
Not
be
say
quiet.
anything.
They wouldn't say anything.
Of course.
I've not found. I know everyone has their opinions about the government, and I even clearly have mine. But I've never found the DOJ to purposely mislead somebody in a case like this of, oh, hey, we closed it and we really didn't. They would have just treated you with silence.
Yeah. I as I said before, I think that was just a narrative that they wanted to promote because it made them look clean. And
yeah,
it's not necessarily true.
I could see maybe the FBI saying another C word, which is that we've completed our investigation.
Oh wow.
That's a common term, and it sort of makes you go, oh crap.
That means when's the other shoe going to drop?
What's the results of the of the completed investigation? I hear that a lot. Is the FBI has completed their investigation and submitted the findings to the Department of Justice, and then the Department of Justice usually says nothing. We have no comment.
No, we certainly want you to come back. But first of all, let me ask you: is there anything you haven't told the audience here tonight? You know that we had Kelly Reed, Karen's family, on this chat tonight. And by the way, Missy, we should reach out to Kelly, have her come on, and reach out to Andrea Burkhart. Maybe they can come on Thursday with our Lollapalooza. We wanted to keep Mike Easter all to ourselves and not have it on the Karen Reed Lollapalooza. Anything that we haven't asked you or the viewers haven't asked you that you want to get out there?
Linda, you make a great detective. You know that, right? Because that's the last question every good investigator asks a witness. Hey, I may not be the best at asking questions, but is there anything else you want to tell me that I should know?
Right. So that it'll come back and bite me in the ass later because I didn't tell you.
It's the catch-all. And then after my interview, I asked them, is there anything else you should tell me? And they're like, no. Maybe just a compliment to the defense. I thought, what an impressive team that was compiled by Yannetti, and how dedicated they were to uncovering, maybe to kind of a ploy on your channel, but to get justice for Karen Reed, right? That takes a lot of commitment from some very in-demand people, such as them. And I would even argue, you always see Yannetti, Alessi, and Alan Jackson, but Miss Little, an enormous and effective attorney. I've actually interacted with her when I was in the government as well, and her skill set may not be standing up and being the orator of things, but her ability to understand the law and to generate legal things, as you two know, is quite impressive. And her grasp of it, every time I've talked to her only a couple times, I'm just so impressed at how smart she is and her ability to recall just the minute of details. And you saw it. They're like, Your Honor, what day was that? And they're like, hey, what that day was it? Well, you know what it is. Tell me. And even the judge everyone's like, Alan, what's the day? I don't know. Little, what's the day? You know it. You know it down there, right? So I would say that to me, I was just so impressed with it. And then I was alternately, I would say I was enormously disappointed with the prosecution, whose goal was to, I felt at times, to prevent witnesses from coming for no good compelling reason other than they didn't want their evidence to be their testimony to be heard, mischaracterizing evidence, misstating evidence, and poorly coaching their witnesses to be overly defensive. And maybe that would be something worth talking about, would be the witness stuff. But
no, don't worry. We're going to get you for a third interview.
Okay, I was going to say, because I have really strong opinions about witness testimony. Like McCabe's was just, I'll give you a teaser for McCabe.
Okay.
Is I not only was she coached or prepped, which is, again, I don't think it's nefarious. but she was overly rehearsed. She over rehearsed, and it became inauthentic. It was inauthentic. Didn't come across as credible, right? She was too rehearsed. I guarantee she spent weeks and months practicing her answers to suspected questions, and she spent too much time trying to, oh, if they say this, I'm going to say this, and if they ask me this, I'm going to delay and I'm going to do this. And you could see it just was.
Mhm.
It didn't come across as natural. She watched way too many things on the internet, I think, of how to be a horrible witness.
Yeah, I think they gave her one definite rule, which was on the recollection refreshing. Don't just it can't be done. It cannot be
Yeah.
done. Nothing you show me will help me.
Well, which makes no sense. It's not. It's not to be offered for the truth of these are your statements now, but you do recall stating it, right? I mean, it's like
Yeah, no,
to say no, I don't. It's like so. Then what they wrote down is a lie. I mean, that's the only
ultimately
alternative.
it backfired on her, but that was clearly a tactic to try
Yeah.
and throw off the cross examination.
Right. And this
but-
is sort of my area, like that I find most interesting. Now, I would have loved to sit down with somebody like her. I wouldn't have been asked to help her in this case, but is we could have worked out how she could be an effective witness if she you don't want to change the nature of who you are, but we just want the best version of yourself, right? And
Right.
so we could have helped her. Listen, most of the questions are designed to make you feel defensive. Just don't be defensive about it and just answer the question. Yuri is a great example. He was defensive about everything. And it's like, these are your reports. Why are you being defensive about your own investigation? It's illogical. I won't keep you on those things, but if you ever wanted to sit down and talk about, so I use this case because I'll be teaching some expert testimony in September, is I took a lot of snips and I used them as examples of what not to do. And you couldn't ask for some better
Yeah,
examples
you got
of
that
poor
right.
witness. Yeah.
Well, you got that right, and you've got the themes. Missy will be in touch with you, I think, Mike, because we're going to set a date for you to come on whenever it's good for you. We keep getting you during your vacation and being with your son. We don't want to really do that date for you to come on, and let's talk about the witnesses. Let's take them, the one, and we'll let you pick them. We'll let you pick them.
And we can use that as a primer for other cases as we go forward. Help our audience figure out what is and isn't working.
Yeah,
I think it would be really interesting for the audience to see is like, well, what was this question designed to listen from the witness? How did the witness perceive the question, and why did they perceive it incorrectly and not understand the theme? So maybe I'll add this as my last thing, and I'll go. I promise. I was asked on the stand in a federal trial. Isn't it true that you teach expert testimony for the FBI? And the answer is yes, I do. Why would I lie about it? Right? It's
Sure.
It's in my resume.
Yeah.
And I said, I do. And she goes, isn't it true you teach people how to answer these questions? And I said, no, I don't teach questions. I teach themes. And I said, would you like me to give an example? And she would normally defense attorneys don't like me giving examples. And they say, no, I don't want you to talk anymore about examples. But she goes, yeah. And I said, for example, she had asked me some questions. I said, you asked questions of me to make me feel defensive. And I know that the goal of your question is to make me just start defending and be argumentative and try to make it look like I'm hiding or misleading. And the reality is I just accept that that's what you're going to do. And I teach people how to answer the themes and recognize the theme and then answer questions within it. Yes, we kind of go over some finite things as it relates to technical information, but if a witness can understand a theme and not respond to it emotionally, but in terms of as a response and kind of bury that emotional response, it can be a very effective witness. And McCabe could have done that. Yuri needed a lot of work on that, and hopefully Colonel Noble will get Yuri some courtroom testimony experience.
Yeah, and I'm not sure Dever is ever going to be effective, but that's beside.
I don't think if I was a betting man, I can't imagine a prosecutor would ever put her on the stand again. There's too much liability.
No.
Or
okay. Well,
Mike,
Professor,
you are
thank
Professor Easter, right?
No, hey, you know what? I'm going to put that when I sign in next time.
There you go, Professor.
But then I would be accused of being Burgess, so maybe I won't.
Shannon with one N.
Michael, thank you so much. Amazing information on this case and others, and it's really so great that you would take the time you did to help us out. We appreciate it.
And here's his website again, just for those of you who are interested in learning more. Lawyers who are watching who want to hire him. people that want to be educated, about what they're doing. There he is. He's now out there in the expert world, big time, I would say. And he didn't even have to testify and get cross-examined to do that.
I know.
Yeah,
That's
and
great.
I would just like to take a moment to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk about the case. As you all know, and your audience knows, I'm having sort of a letdown now of what do I do if I'm not listening to the current trial on my headset. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come share some of my experience and specifically as it relates to this case. And I look forward to the opportunity to share my insight on some other cases. Some of these cases coming
great.
in the future.
Koberger, we have Koberger coming up.
I was part of, and I would have some. Although I wouldn't provide you any specific insights, I do. I think we're going to see some really good evidence in that case that the FBI collected. I think it'd be interesting.
Great.
We have Adelson
And-
coming up, and he talked about ticklers, and there was an issue. She's a Florida woman about the FBI tickling her and getting an admission.
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
of course, we have Sandra Birchmore coming up with the FBI investigation. So
Right.
there's a lot for you to
Yep.
teach out here for people that are true crime followers and believers in law enforcement for the most part,
Yeah, and maybe hopefully remind people that this isn't how law enforcement's done across the country, that law enforcement doesn't ever intend to conduct cases that are based on privilege, prejudice, and come to a premature conclusion. That should never be their goal.
Yeah.
Very
Thank you,
good,
Mike.
sir.
All right,
Thank
let Missy
you.
know when you
Enjoy-
come back, and we'll just get it
Yeah.
up.
Enjoy the rest of your vacation, though.
Okay, the next time we meet, I promise to not be on vacation, and if I am, I'm gonna lie.
We're
Take care.
forward.
All right, see you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, don't ever go away. Let's go through these. Mike, he's amazing. Let's go through these 16 left super chats. Okay.
Fire away.
I'll put them up, and you want to read them or what?
Okay.
Okay. Here we go.
So we got Paul Young's gifting a JSTV membership. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Paul. Very nice. Annie from Southie. Chris Albert killed an exchange student, went on the run for a few days. Paul O'Keefe was drinking and driving and paralyzed a young man. Karen Reed paid for his bail and lawyer. We know that drinking and driving is quite the pastime up there. Not endorsed, not encouraged, but I'm telling you, the penalties, we talked about this, aren't very threatening,
No, they're not. No,
you
they're
can get convicted 4 times before the penalty exceeds 2.5 years. And the first 2 times, generally, it's a slap on the wrist, and you go to driving school. So everything's regionally different. Believe me, in home state of California, I got a lot of problems with my home state of California, but the way they bring down the hammer on people for drunk driving is not one of them.
Yeah.
Okay, what else we got?
All right, I got with 3 of these in a row.
Joey
Another
Kane.
one.
Thank you, Joey. So
another
I'm
one.
guessing it's 3 times 1 or 3 Just to Serve TV memberships.
No
Thank you,
collision,
Joey.
no collision, no collision. I think that's the meaning for that, right, Joey?
Okay.
Very smart. Okay, my favorite
Linda,
name.
this is you, Linda. This is your alter ego.
Okay.
Thank you, Linda and Michael. Best coverage and guests ever. Linda taught me so much.
Thank you very much for that. Okay,
Meatball Morrissey, Skeddy State. Is this a different one? Oh, Tully
no,
played
this is a different
football
one,
with
right.
Paul O'Keefe in college. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. isn't that
Peg
interesting?
leg hated Karen. It's all about money, in my opinion. Isn't everything?
Yeah, money, money, money. It seems to
Yeah.
rule the world. Follow the money, right?
Ryder Bowen, I wish we could buy a commemorative T-shirt with victory image of Karen and the team walking out of court after the verdict with justice served, and your name's underneath on the back and small JS logo on the front. Well,
I'm saying that because Madeira Beach Caregiver also has asked for a commemorative shirt. So maybe when Dizzy sees this, Missy, tomorrow, we can screenshot this. This is a really good idea.
yeah. Let's get to work on that.
Thanks,
That's a good
Ryder.
idea.
Terrific. And then, okay, so here we go.
Just to Serve TV membership. Thank you. Here comes drama. Thank you. Appreciate that. Blessed in Texas, Just to Serve TV membership. Again, thank you. We appreciate the support. The folks who get these, I know, appreciate them as well. Is that another one? Or
No,
did
that's
you
another
glitch?
one. That's
another one.
I think glitch
Okay.
is the second one.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Blessed in Texas.
People really appreciate when they get them. Catnut Williams.
I don't see that. Where is it? Oh,
Coming
there
up.
you go.
There you
Just
go.
Serve TV membership. Thank you, Catnut Williams.
Okay.
Brittany.
Just a donation. I
Very
don't say
nice.
just. I mean, just a very,
Yeah,
very
is that
lovely.
a
Thank
is
you
that an
very much.
animal? I'm trying to see what the is that a
I
rabbit?
can't. I asked you to read it because I can't see. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Leah Baker.
Leah Baker.
go
Proctor
ahead. Thank
knew
you.
how to investigate. Yeah, he chose not to investigate. Microdots, good cop, bad cop, shows that. Yeah, I think I would agree. And I think Michael Easter comes from a pure point of view, where he's saying the cops, they just didn't do this. He's taking out of that equation that they purposefully did things wrong or did not do things. We're not afraid to do that. We think that's exactly what happened. And I agree, Leah Baker. Thank you for the donation. Appreciate it. Laricia Harris, is that right? Or Larasia Harris?
Larisha.
Larisha, thank you. Idaho Ray for the what accused the state of, I don't know this case either. Do you know this case?
No.
Idaho. Turning
Koberger's
over approximately
Idaho.
3% of the data crucial for their work, according to reports. I believe the state had them initially said no. Mike's opinion. Well, unfortunately, Mike is gone now.
Yeah, he's gone, and I think he was into Koberger. Larisha, I'm sorry. I didn't
Yeah,
see
he
that
did,
you wanted his
and he's going to
opinion.
share to whatever degree he can his work in that case,
Yeah,
and we focus on that case
Yeah.
in the not too distant future. But
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you very much.
All of that, and
again,
I butchered the name as well. Sorry.
Yeah, no, Larisha, she's one of our big supporters also. Thank you very much. And then this will lead us to what we're doing after on Wednesday night. Tomorrow night, we're going to be doing P. Diddy and we will have a report from court from Terry Austin, who's been in the courtroom the whole time. On Wednesday.
And Doug Weinstein, who will be here.
And that's right. That's right. Dougie's
Anybody
gonna be
that,
here tomorrow.
when you think YSL, you think Rico, you think rap music, and the crossovers, he's lived it. So his perspective on the Diddy case is important.
Yeah, and we're going to start trying to do updates on Birchmore at least once a week. We want to be the go-to network with Mizzy. Mizzy obviously is the go-to person right now. She knows everything there is to know on Sandra Birchmore. Hopefully, as lawyers, we can break down what's happening and what may be happening. And I think people may have to be worried when they see Farwell, because we now know that he's not the father of the baby. That means somebody else is.
How unpopular would a deal be if you were to roll? How unpopular would that be?
No, we wouldn't be that unpopular, would it? And since he obviously killed her for no reason, although he probably still had a reason. There may be a lot of things that we don't know.
As I understand it, I mean, if he believed, remember, there were apparently no tests at the time, and if Ms. Birchmore told him, "You're the father," and he acted on that information,
it makes it worse.
The fact that the baby was or wasn't his is almost irrelevant.
Yeah, it makes it worse. And quite frankly, we're going to also be concentrating on a couple of things when we do Sandra Birchmore. The fact that this really, in many states, would be a double homicide. The baby was 10 weeks old, okay?
Yeah,
in many states would be charged
perhaps
double homicide,
but definitely yes.
And also, where are you, Norfolk County, in terms of charging a homicide? Where are you, Massachusetts Attorney General, in terms of charging a homicide? Where are you, Governor Maura Healey, in terms of overseeing investigations? This investigation, Karen Reed, began under your term as AG, from what I understand and look back at. So where are you? So we're going to be concentrating hard on that. And that's going to be Wednesday night. And then, of course, Thursday night will be our Lollapalooza of Karen Reed. We'll bring a lot of people in. So it's been quite a night. It's been quite a night.
Yes. Yeah. We need another weekend off. Okay. So to recap, tomorrow night, Doug Weinstein and Terry Austin on Diddy. And then we get into Birchmore. And then we have the recap on Karen Reed with all kinds of players. Okay.
So,
good job.
But one thing I didn't have a chance to say, because I thought it was important not to interrupt Mike Easter, and I know you did too. We delayed some of our clips that we were showing. And by the way, he gave us information that we didn't know. It makes it even worse. The prosecution.
I know. I'm going to clip out some of the stuff when I get a chance and repost it. The Higgins HB reference, so that he couldn't be searched.
Oh, that was unbelievable, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about privilege. Boy, did that juror get? Boy, I'd love to have the jurors on, and one of the jurors on who said that.
That was the fourth person.
That was a
Yeah.
four-person. You
Yeah.
said this is a case of
Who
privilege.
wants
We'd
to
love-
remain anonymous?
for all of you out there, if you know any of the jurors or in discussion with, please ask them to get in touch with us. We really would love to interview them here, especially now that they can come back and look at what Mike Easter was going to say. But in the meantime, what you have to do is, so many of you are on chatting tonight, you really need to hit subscribe. We're young, we're small, but we're hungry, and we think we're a little powerful. We've grown because of you very quickly. But to show other people and get into that YouTube algorithm, we have to hit subscribe, like, share, notify. And when we come up with a thumbnail, like we already have thumbnails, I think, for at least Wednesday night. I'm not sure we have one for tomorrow night yet, Missy. If you go and hit the like early, we understand that it gets you into the algorithm that gets pushed out. So even though the thumbnail comes up, if you hit that like when that comes up, the algorithm starts pushing you out. That's why you'll see a lot of people that have 1,000 likes when they're announced, and then they're pushed out already. So
yeah, recommendations from YouTube are key, and it's all about beating the bot. So, all right, okay, so rest up. See you tomorrow night. We'll do a little something. In the meantime, I'm Michael Bryant. Try to do the right thing.
I'm Linda Kenney Baden. Together we are Justice Served TV.